Florida will stand trial in May. Marky Floyd is accused of fatally shooting his ex-girlfriend, Sade Dixon, on December 10, 2016, before shooting Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton when she tried to arrest him in January 2017. Lloyd reportedly lost the use of one of his eyes while being apprehended by authorities, claiming he suffered an unprovoked police attack. Lloyd now faces the death penalty. The trial of Pan Huck, the woman accused of killing a mentally disabled man in Missouri to cover up another murder in 2011, is set to begin in June. Prosecutors claim Huck fatally shot 33-year-old Louis Gumpenberger to divert attention for the murder of Betsy Faria, whose husband, Russ Faria, she framed for the killing in 2011. Huck was the star witness in Faria's first murder trial, resulting in a guilty verdict. Faria was later acquitted during a second trial. Huck now faces a charge of first-degree murder for Gumpenberger's killing. The two suspects, accused of killing a Florida state law professor in a murder-for-hire plot in 2014, will face a jury in June 2019. The suspects, Sigfredo Garcia and Catherine Magbanua, reportedly hired a hitman, Luis Rivera, who allegedly drove from Miami to Tallahassee and fatally shot Dan Markel. Rivera took a plea deal to a lesser charge of second-degree murder in exchange for his testimony against Garcia and Magbanua. Investigators believe the suspects were hired by Markel's ex-wife's family to kill Markel over a custody dispute, but no family members have been charged. The suspects now face charges of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and solicitation of murder. The ex-wife of NBA star Lorenzo Wright is set to stand trial for his murder in November 2019. Shira Wright and her cousin, Billy Turner, are accused of conspiring to kill Wright in 2010 when Wright's body was found with multiple gunshot wounds in Tennessee. The pair allegedly had a co-conspirator, Wright's cousin, convicted killer Jimmy Martin, who allegedly assisted with the cleanup of the crime scene. Martin turned state's witness, leading investigators to the murder weapon, which was tossed in a lake in Walnut, Michigan. Wright now faces a charge of first-degree murder, but won't face the death penalty if convicted. I'm Anthony Velez for Law and Crime, and those were the top upcoming trials of 2019.
All right, thanks, Anthony. A lot to cover in 2019. But before we go to our break, I want to give you an update out of Colorado. You know the case of Kelsey Berreth, who disappeared about a month ago, this 29-year-old mother who has a 1-year-old daughter. Well, prosecutors have just filed formal criminal charges against Patrick Frazee, her fiancé. He has been charged with 3 counts of solicitation to commit murder and 2 counts of murder, which is interesting because investigators have not said exactly the specifications of their allegations against Mr. Frazee. It could be that he committed the murder himself, or maybe hired someone to do it. This is very interesting, and their updates have been coming out of Colorado about what actually happened to Kelsey Berreth. Her body has not been found, but clearly investigators believe that she is no longer alive, and they believe that Mr. Frazee is the one responsible. As soon as we have more information about that case, we'll make sure to let you know. In the meantime, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to start with the trial of William Riley Gaul. We'll be right back.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law and Crime Network.
The only 24/7 network with expert legal analysis and gavel-to-gavel live trial coverage.
He kissed me goodbye on the cheek. That was the last time we saw him.
From high-profile cases to the most compelling local trials.
You didn't expect. Let me finish.
We cover the most interesting and important legal news going on across the country.
The former officer took the stand.
And our multi-platform brand is resonating. From syndication.
With more, we're joined by Law and Crime Network host Jesse Weber.
To our expert analysis.
With me now is Rachel Stockman, editor-in-chief for Law and Crime Network.
This former head prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, and host of Law and Crime Network, Bob Bianchi.
On Monday, the Law and Crime Network covering the trial live.
Let's get to the top legal stories of the day with Jesse Weber, attorney and anchor for the Law and Crime Network. So good morning, Jesse.
With dozens of places to watch, we already have tens of millions of minutes viewed per month. And our viewers and readers are engaged, with more than 30,000 comments per month on the site, a bustling chat room, and an average watch time of 30 minutes.
Womanizer, that's fine. It doesn't make me guilty of solicitation of capital murder.
In the fastest growing genre in America, we are uniquely positioned to dominate. This is Law and Crime.
You talk to... In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music just like other families do over sports, camping, or other interests. And we talked. Little everyday conversations from silly to serious that built a foundation over time. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life. And I was so grateful that you and Mom had become these sober, stable people who were always there for me.
I wanted you to know from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, whether it's music or anything else. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Matthew. I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. And what you say really does matter to me.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me, and they make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for preparing me for what's ahead.
Talk, they hear you.
Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. Now, how can we not talk about some of the most memorable trials of 2018 without talking about the Riley Gaul case? This young man who was charged with multiple counts, including first-degree murder in connection with the shooting death of his ex-girlfriend, Emma Jane Walker. She was only 16 years old when she was shot and killed inside of her bedroom. Prosecutors allege that he stole his grandfather's gun, went outside of her house, and fired into her bedroom, ultimately killing her. Now, the question is not whether or not he did this. The question is, was this murder? While prosecutors say this was an intentional killing, the defense said he didn't intend to kill her, but merely wanted to get her attention, wanted to come as her savior, that this was a bad breakup and really just with a tragic result. But that's me discussing the case. Let's start right now with the prosecution's opening statement.
Well, late Sunday night, things are really coming to a boil. The defendant had in the past, with these social media apps, you can block people and so that their messages don't come through. And Emma had done that, block, unblock, block, unblock, block, unblock, both ways. And on that Sunday night, Emma was home doing homework. You're going to hear that from Evan, that they had tussled a little bit over the laptop because he had homework, and Jill's going to say, I can't believe you both waited on Sunday night to do your homework. But nonetheless, Emma did homework that night, and she went to bed. But you're also going to hear that Riley had a friend at Markel College named Mac Siegel, and you're going to hear from Mac. And Mac is going to tell you that from time to time, Riley's battery would be dead on his phone, and he would use my phone to call whoever. Emma, he would use his phone sometimes. And that Sunday night, you're going to hear and a whole lot of work went into this map. This is the map of his cell tower locations on Sunday night, just before midnight, and approaching up all the way until 4:30 when he comes back to Markel College. A lot of work went into this, and this was a map of opportunity to show you that he was actually in Knoxville around the Carbondale address when the homicide occurred, but he kind of took that away when he stood up and said, I'm plead guilty, I did shoot your house. This isn't as important as it used to be, but nonetheless, it shows you that prior to midnight is in green, and post-midnight is in red. Gunshots are heard in the neighborhood about 3 a.m. In the green, prior to midnight, he's still in Knoxville. And you're going to hear testimony from his buddy Noah that on Sunday night, they're hanging out. Riley says he's got to go back to college to do homework for classes. And so you're going to see the first data point beyond midnight is he's back in Maryville already, and that's going to be at 13 minutes after midnight. So at 11:08, he's still in Knoxville. By 13 minutes after midnight, he's in Maryville. And you're going to see that he stays in Maryville at least until 12:30. And 12:30, 12:29 actually, he's on his way back. He's already up here close to, he's on Alcohol Highway, pinging up here closer to Knoxville. And it's important to know, when you look at the records, you're going to hear from Max Siegel, who's going to say, yeah, he came back from Maryville College that night, and he asked me to borrow his phone, or he asked to borrow my phone because he said his mother had his phone, yet you're going to see that his phone is pinging all the way to Maryville, and he's actually talking to people on his phone. You're going to hear from those people too. So Max Siegel, he made up a reason for Mac to hand him his phone, and he takes Mac's phone outside, and he starts to wear her out. First call, 14 minutes, she actually talks to him. He tells the police in that conversation she was cruel to him. But in the next, between 11:40, when he first starts calling her, that first 14-minute call, until about 12:09, the last call that Emma receives, and or text, there's about 64 different, either text, SMS, voice calls, missed calls, etc. 64. Back to back to back to back to back to back to back. And he's saying things like, in his text, Emma, I'm begging. At 12:09:39, I'm begging. 12:03:47, please God answer. 12:03:50, please, I'm begging you. This is 3 hours before he kills her. 12:03:57, I ain't hurt like this. 12:04:01, please just talk to me. This is from Mac's phone to Emma's. 12:04:04, please. 12:04:40, please. 12:06:06, please. 12:06:10, don't do this, I can't. 12:06:28, please. And that's about 10 or 12 calls, and so there's a total of 64 communications and another 40 attempted phone calls, including the 14-minute one.
So you're getting a kind of a sense of the relationship between the defendant and the victim. Let's move now on to the defense's opening statement and see how they did.
The way this is going to work is, the state makes their opening statements, we make our opening statements. They have the burden of proof, so they have to do that part first. Then they start calling witnesses. We examine those witnesses. In my cross-examination, we may introduce some exhibits to their witnesses, and then they call another witness, and we go through that process. And you're not to make a decision until after you heard all of the evidence. Everyone. From everybody. And even when you've heard the evidence, then we get back up and we'll argue. Alan will go first. He represents the state of Tennessee. He has the burden of proof. I go second. Because he has the burden, then he does what's called a rebuttal argument. And then at that point, the judge will instruct you on law. And it's not until you all are seated back in your jury room, for those of you who have served on juries, you know what that is like. Then that's when you start making your decision. In about 2014, and I can't tell you exactly when that happened, Riley Gaul was a junior at Central High School. He was playing football for Central High School. He was a junior. Emma Walker was a freshman. It was about when Mr. Gaul was 16 years old, still a child, at the age of 16, when he met Emma Walker. And I may be a little wrong on this. I do struggle with dates of birth and calculating those. Probably why I'm not an accountant, but nonetheless, she was about 14 years old. If I'm a little wrong on that, I'm sorry, but she was about 14 years old. She was about 16 when they started dating. It was a 2-year relationship. And that relationship went on for a period of 2 years. It was not always a healthy relationship. Emma would say things bad to Riley. Riley would say things bad to her. But that's not how the relationship started. And it is true, I suspect, I've not spoken with Jill or Mark Walker, but I suspect that they will say they didn't want Riley around her dog. but for a period of 2 years. And we submit to you up until November the 20th, and maybe into the morning of the 21st, they were still having communications with each other. Mr. Merritt interviewed a lot of people in this case. James Hurst interviewed a lot of people in this case. And I've listened to those interviews. And one of the things that just stands out in my mind of what some of the things that Mr. Merritt said, and I'm paraphrasing now, but I've got it written down, that he didn't know what Riley was thinking. Don't know what his intentions were. Don't know what he was thinking when all this was going on. Another thing that Mr. Merritt said was this relationship was a tumultuous relationship. I think somebody described it as a pretty crazy relationship. But I think what the evidence will show you is that this was a very on and off relationship. And Mr. Allen's correct. These two individuals would say they're blocking each other, not block each other, talk, block. And there are, I didn't know how much information can be on a cell phone until this case. The numbers of text messages, the numbers of calls, the numbers of images is enormous. I think Ms. Martin would agree with that. But nonetheless, there was this over and over and over communications of these two young children. In August of 2016.
All right, let's get some analysis of this case right now. Joining us is Law and Crime trial analyst, first guest of 2019, Jana Spilborn. Jana, great to see you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jesse. Good to be here.
Good to have you. So we're listening to this case. The idea that the defense seems to be putting is that, hey, he's not his girlfriend's killer. He wanted to be her hero. He wanted to get attention. What do you think about that?
Yeah, this case is sad on so many levels. I mean, first of all, we're dealing with a couple of kids. I know that he was 18 at the time that he committed this crime. She was only 16, but at 18, I don't think, especially a male brain, is not fully matured. Let's say that. Anyhow, but the problem with this defense is if they're going to try to get a jury to believe that Riley Gaul only wanted to scare her, there are far better ways to do it, Jesse, than shooting into a bedroom in the middle of the night where she lay sleeping and defenseless.
Well, if you listen to the prosecution's case, this guy was not all there. I mean, he had this plot where he thought he was going to be kidnapped, right? Wasn't that one of the ways he tried to pretend that he was kidnapped to get her attention?
Yeah, to get her attention. I mean, look, teenagers in love, they fall in, they fall out, they do a lot of crazy things. This is beyond that. Although the defense, make no mistake, this is not an insanity defense by any stretch. This is actually a very technical defense that the defense wants to mount, that the intent to murder was not there.
Because he allegedly shot these bullets from outside of the home into her bedroom, which would suggest if you really wanted to kill her, wouldn't have been another way to do it, as opposed to that seems to be taking a kind of risk. It doesn't seem to be intentional. That's what the defense could argue.
A very large risk, but don't forget, he's also charged here with felony murder, and the felony murder rule is a very weird construct in the law that sort of removes the element of intent if you are in the commission of any felony when somebody gets killed.
And here you could argue the aggravated stalking is that felony.
Exactly.
Because he was also charged with stalking, felony murder, first-degree murder, tampering with evidence, reckless endangerment, and possessing a firearm charge. Right. They threw everything at this guy.
You know, and as they should. This is such a tragedy that was easily preventable. So I don't blame the prosecution sometimes I'm very critical that prosecutors overcharge, not in this case.
Well, there's a lot to talk about, clearly, in this case. So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to continue our recap of the William Riley Gaul trial. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is more legal news you can use. Today's topic focuses upon the common issue of when your neighbor's trees cause you problems. So what are your rights? By law, you can trim branches or limbs of a neighbor's tree that extends past the property line. But don't go overboard. You can't chop down the tree. Otherwise, you may have to pay for it. Now, if the tree blocks your view, 1, check if there's a local ordinance. 2, maybe you can enter into an agreement with your neighbor regarding the view. Or 3, see whether your neighbor deliberately and maliciously blocked your view, because you then may have a case. A couple more strange things. Your neighbor not only owns the tree, but the fruit on it too. So technically, you're not allowed to pick fruit off of it. Courts, however, are split about fruit that falls onto your property. Although, honestly, why not just go to a supermarket? Are you really that in need of an apple? Also, you may think your neighbor has to clean up all the leaves from the tree that blow into your yard. Well, you'd be wrong. Leaves are not the owner's responsibility. So instead, try building a fence. Now, your neighbor can be held liable by a court if a tree falls and causes damage to your property, but it all depends on how the tree was maintained and inspected. At the end of the day, it's important to know your rights, but always try speaking with your neighbor first to address the problem. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
A brain aneurysm doesn't care if you're busy. It doesn't care that you have important meetings. It doesn't care that you have to drop your daughter off at ballet and your son off at soccer practice. And if you ignore the warning signs of a brain aneurysm, you'll realize too late that the meeting wasn't that important. No meeting is. That you'll never see another soccer game, and that your daughter won't see you in the audience at the big recital. So if you suddenly experience the worst headache of your life, sharp pain behind your eye, and blurry vision, don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care, because your family is counting on you to take care of you. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation, shedding light on brain aneurysms. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
As we constantly talk about privacy today, one of the biggest questions is how do you protect a photo or video of yourself from being used online without your permission? Now, I know you kids love face twittering and instabooking, so let's start with the basic idea that you need to be careful where you post pictures and videos. That means understanding a website's terms of service, because you may be granting a site a license to use your image in ways that you weren't aware of. Also, most legitimate sites will lay out their process to remove material, so you'll want to follow those steps first to get something deleted immediately. But what laws help you to do all this? Here we go, you little legal eagles. Basic rule: you automatically own the copyright in any photo or video you take. Technically, you can go after someone for copyright infringement if your photos or videos are posted or distributed online without your permission. However, under a complicated law called the DMCA, platforms that allow people to post on their sites, such as YouTube, must be provided notice of the infringement before you can properly sue them. Speaking of lawsuits, you may be able to sue someone under state right of privacy or publicity laws. For example, if without your consent your face or body are being exploited online to sell or promote something, or if there was a photo or video secretly taken of you while you were in private, you may have a very strong case. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
Welcome back, everybody. We're covering some of the most memorable trials of 2018, and how could we not talk about the trial of William Riley Gaul, the young man who was charged with killing his ex-girlfriend, Emma Jane Walker, who was only 16 years old when she was gunned down. Now, one of the things we have to analyze is this relationship between William Riley Gaul and Miss Walker. And one of the best witnesses we saw was Jill Walker. This was Emma's mother, who took the stand and explained a little bit more about their toxic relationship. Take a look.
I guess he was kind of playing the both.
Okay. And you took, of course, whose side of that?
Emma's.
Okay. And so the falling out of the relationship, is that the beginning of the falling out in terms of what you found?
How you treat someone.
Okay. And at some point, do you monitor your child in any particular way in terms of seeing what she's doing?
I mean, yes, but I mean, as a parent of teenagers, check text, monitor things, see what's going on.
Okay. And so did you do that on a regular basis?
Yes.
Leading up to the fall of when, or rather his graduation in that summer, had you been regular about checking texts and communication?
Yes.
And did you become concerned about those types of things?
Yes.
Tell us why.
Just some of the language and the way that she was spoken to, we didn't feel it was appropriate to speak to anyone like that.
And did you address those concerns with Riley?
Yes.
And how was his attitude towards that?
And we would talk to him, and he would explain he was angry and try to defend himself against it.
Okay. And was he respectful to you?
Face to face, he was respectful to us.
Okay. But would you see something else on the phone?
On phones, it was just angry if we would say no or not let her do something. I felt like some things were not. He didn't respect us as parents. When we said no, we meant no.
Okay. And so what did you do as a result to try and parent your child with regard to her relationship with Riley Gaul?
We tried to discourage her from seeing him. Sometimes you have to give and take a little bit. So we would set limits on how and they could see each other.
Jill Walker, she couldn't imagine that even in a bad relationship, she'd be sitting in this courtroom today about what she's testifying to.
Oh, no, your heart has to go out to her as the mother of this young victim. And even more so because right now she's explaining how they tried to discourage or dissuade this relationship because they saw it going down a bad path. But
no. I mean, we see that a lot in relationships in these kinds of cases, but who knows what could actually ultimately happen here, you know?
You never expect this ultimate tragedy.
No, and let's play a little bit more of her testimony from this trial.
She was just, we had gotten up and I had followed her to work and we had gone to eat breakfast before she went.
Why'd you follow her to work?
I was just worried about the events that had happened that weekend.
Okay. Pursuant to your conversation?
Yes.
Okay. And with regard to that shift, what was her shift that day?
It was either from 12 to 5 or 1 to 5.
Okay. And what happened at the end of her shift?
Her dad, Mark, went to wait until she got off to follow her home.
Okay. And so when Emma arrives home after work, describe the night, if you would.
I had cooked dinner, and then she had worked on homework.
Just a normal night?
Mm-hmm. And then she'd gone eat ice cream with her dad later that night.
About what time that happened?
It's between 7 and 8. I'm not sure exactly.
Okay. What time did you go to bed?
Around 10:30.
What about your husband, Mark? What time did he go to bed?
He's in bed by usually 8 or 8:30.
Why is that?
He gets up at 4 for his job.
Okay. Out of Y12?
Yes.
Which early morning shift?
Yes.
Okay. And as far as Evan is concerned, what time does Evan go to bed?
It varies. I don't always make it up because, like as he said, that it's probably between 11 and 12.
Okay. And before you went to bed, did anything occur between Evan and Emma?
They had a little disagreement over the computer, but they waited till the last minute to do homework. And they had a little conversation about it. And then that was, and then I didn't really, I think they situated it themselves and fixed it, and then I went to bed.
So what time was the last time you saw your daughter alive?
About 10:30 when I told her good night, 10 or 10:30.
Tell us about, you went to bed at 10:30. You said that Emma was in her bedroom, and
yes.
Evan was in his,
yes.
And Mark, of course, with you. And you've already described you're on the other side of the house.
Yes.
I want you to describe the nighttime hours, if you would. When you went to sleep that night, after you went to bed at 10:30, did anything cause you to get up out of bed during the normal sleeping hours?
I wake up a lot anyway, but I'll wake up sometimes and just check on them in the middle of the night.
Okay.
And so I think I'd gotten up between 1 and 1:30, saw her TV was on, and went in her room and turned her TV off.
Okay, is that something you've done in the past?
Yes.
Okay. And you think it's about 1 and 1:30?
Yes.
Do you know that because that's what you normally do, or did you see the clock?
I saw the clock.
Okay. And describe that if you would. You said you went into Emma's room. Describe her room and where her TV is in relation to as you enter her room.
It's on the pierce her bed, and it's on the wall. The window's on this wall, and the TV's on the opposite wall.
Okay. So it's opposite the wall of the backyard?
Yes, yes.
And obviously, if you go in her room, you said the TV is on?
Yes.
Is the light on in the room?
No, just her television.
Okay. But the TV, is that illuminating it all?
Yes.
And what can you see?
She was sleeping. I didn't pay close attention. I went in there and turned the TV off and then left, but she was in her room sleeping.
Okay. Did you notice anything unusual?
No.
Did you hear anything during the night?
No. I remember Mark coming back to bed later because he said he had heard something.
Okay. And at what point do you get up?
I never got up at that moment. I got up when my alarm went off for work.
And when was that?
That was at 5 a.m.
You get up at 5 a.m.?
Yes.
And what's the morning routine, your morning schedule?
I get ready and pack their lunches and make breakfast for them before they get up.
Okay. And did you do that this morning?
Yes. I was getting her up earlier than normal that morning.
How come?
She wanted to wash her hair.
Okay. She liked her hair?
She liked her hair. She had lots of hair.
Yes. And so what time was the plan for her to wash her hair?
I was getting her up at 6:15.
Okay. And did you do so?
Well, I went in her room.
Well, tell the members of the jury, when you went in her room at 6:15, what'd you do?
Tried to wake her up.
How so?
I touched her on her legs, tried to wake her up. And normally she wakes up pretty quickly, or will make us, or run or something when I wake her up. And there was no response. And so I went over to her shoulder and said, Emma, and then there was no response. So I was checking for a pulse, and there was no response. She was unresponsive.
Could you see what was wrong?
I couldn't tell what was wrong.
Okay. And what did you do next?
I called 911.
And did you go back in the room after that initial time?
Yes.
Okay. What for?
Just to make sure there wasn't anything I could do. Describe
how you saw your daughter that morning.
She was laying on her back. Her tongue was out of her mouth. I noticed something on the bed. I thought that was she'd gotten sick or was vomit. I wasn't sure. But she looked like she was sleeping.
And what were you thinking was wrong?
I had no idea.
And what did you tell 911?
That she was just unresponsive.
You know, John, one of the most startling things about this case, and as you listen to Jill Walker, is the idea that this happened in their home. This happened in a childhood home. This happened in her bedroom. So, as a way of safety, it couldn't get any more worse than that.
No, in the middle of the night, and the parents apparently slept through it and then discovered this the next day. It's just an incredible tragedy.
It is a tragedy, and whether you believe the prosecution, you believe the defense or not, the clear answer is that she was killed. And the question is, we know who did the firing. The question is, what was the motivation? Was this an attempt to get her attention, or was this an intentional killing? Based upon her testimony and this rocky relationship, if you're sitting on the jury, what are you starting to think about now?
This is what you're starting to think. Why on earth would a young man intentionally fire a gun? Now, we know that the defense is going to say he didn't intend to kill her. But ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he intentionally went over there with a loaded gun, pulled the trigger. Not only that, he had to steal the gun first in order to get over there with a loaded gun and pull the trigger.
The idea of this staged kidnapping to get her to come out of a house, the text messages where it seems to be he's obsessed with her. I'm curious, does that help his case or hurt his case if he's saying this wasn't intentional?
I'm saying it hurts it because it doesn't put him in a very good frame of mind.
Interesting. Okay, we'll see which way it goes. We've got a lot more to talk about. So when we come back, we're going to move on to the friends of these two and see what they knew about this situation before the shooting. We'll be right back.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law&Crime Network.
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law&Crime Network.
And I got up off the floor, and I grabbed the gun, and I shot him.
So why did you fire?
Desperation,
The only 24/7 network with expert legal analysis and gavel to gavel live trial coverage.
He kissed me goodbye on the cheek. That was the last time we saw him.
From the high-profile cases.
Goodbye, Larry. May God bless your dark, broken soul.
To the most compelling local trials.
You didn't expect her. Let me finish.
Law&Crime stands out by bringing you more than 8 hours of live trial coverage every day.
Womanizer, that's fine. It doesn't make me guilty of solicitation of capital murder.
The former officer took the stand.
Watch the Law&Crime Network today.
My name is Sam Leitch. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. And now I know what a miracle feels like. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. Over 130 million people have already signed up, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
And welcome back, everybody. We're recapping the William Riley Gaul trial as one of the most memorable trials of 2018. A really sad case. And we just listened to the testimony of Jill Walker. This is the mother of the victim. But she was not the only person to testify about this strange relationship between the defendant and the victim. We also heard from the friends of the victim, Emma Walker. And I want to start right now with Zach Green, who's going to talk a little bit more about how the defendant may have staged a fake kidnapping to get the attention of Emma. Take a look.
11:30. It's late.
And at some point, does Emma alarm you or alert you to something happening to her or with her?
Yeah, I'm on Sarah's house. I walk in and she's like, I guess go into the bathroom in front of me, and she's getting some weird text messages.
And she tells you she tells you about that, and does she share those with you? Do you actually look at them and see them?
Mm-hmm.
And what's the nature of those text messages that you can see on her phone?
The person was saying that they were kidnapped. Come outside alone if you don't want to see one of your loved ones get hurt.
Okay. And how did she respond to that?
She was shaken. She didn't know what to think of them.
Okay. And what did you advise her?
She's like, I'm going to go outside, and so I went with her.
Okay. You personally went outside with her? And where did the Setons live? And where did you go out the front door, back door, or how'd you exit the house? Back door? Mm-hmm. And where did you go when you went out the back door of the Setons?
Back door, went off the deck, and kind of where all the cars were. We walked a little bit, we looked, and didn't see anyone.
Okay, the Setons have a big yard, a lot of cars parked there. Most of the kids that come to the party have cars?
Yeah.
Okay. And so how many cars are there in the yard there when you go out?
Maybe like 6 or 7.
Okay. So when you go out this first time, you don't see anything, you said? Okay. And what happens next?
So then we go back inside. We sit back with everyone else on the couch, and she gets a text message, and it's like, what do you not understand about coming outside alone?
Okay. How'd you respond to that?
She was freaking out a little bit. She kind of kept to herself in the text, like she would text it back, and then if something else like shook her, she would say that.
So you were right there with her this whole time? You didn't leave her side?
She went to another room for a little bit, and then she came back out because my phone wasn't on the other side.
Okay. So at some point, do the text messages leave you outside again? Mm-hmm. Okay. Describe the circumstances of that to the jury.
She comes back in the room that I'm in. She's like, Zach, let's go. We need to go outside. We walk back outside, and then we see a figure laying down on the ground. I grab her.
Where is that? Where is the figure laying on the ground?
Outside, kind of the front yard.
Okay. Describe the length, if you would, of the driveway of the Seton residence. How long would you say it is? Are you good with distances before we do this? Okay. Could you throw a baseball and hit the end of the driveway?
Yeah.
Okay. And or how many cars do you think could be parked up and down the driveway lengthwise?
I would probably say 5 or 6.
Okay. And he's at the bottom of the driveway, or
he's kind of like in the middle, kind of close to the top.
Okay. And you said lying down?
Like face down.
Just in a prone position?
Face down, kind of like this, like covering his face, make sure his face is kind of hidden.
Okay. And what is he? Is he making any noise?
I don't hear any noise. I was just scared there was like a figure. So then I got her and we ran back outside the house.
Okay. Obviously, it was obvious to you it was a person.
Yeah.
Was the person moving?
Mm-hmm.
And you said you don't recall if the person was making noises. Okay. So you see a figure, then you come back inside. What happens next?
I said, like, tell them, like, there's someone outside. And so then the commotion wakes up Sarah's dad.
Okay.
And he comes downstairs.
So Mr. Seton is a part of this, what is about to happen next?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And what is about to happen next?
Not everyone, me, Emma, Max, and Haley, and Barry go outside.
And Barry's Mr. Seton?
Yes.
Okay.
And when we go outside, we see that Riley has gone up and is walking down Housewell Pike.
Okay. You named him Riley this time. At this point, did you know that it was Riley? Or had you known that?
He was walking through a red light, and we saw him.
Okay.
So Riley Gaul's outside of this person's house on the driveway, pretending that he got kidnapped in an effort to get his ex-girlfriend Emma Jane Walker outside of the house. This is according to Zach Green, one of her friends. Pretty strange. Let's listen to Max Bacon, who was also there, to describe the next series of events. Take a look.
And did you get close enough to hear what was being said?
Yes, sir.
And what was Riley Gaul saying?
So when we got down there, I think they already been talking for a moment, and Emma was saying, "So are you telling me that you were kidnapped?" And that's all it was.
Okay, and what was Riley saying?
He said, "I don't know where I am, and my head hurts."
Okay. And were their voices normal or raised?
Raised. They sounded upset.
Okay. And what did Emma tell him after that?
I'm tired of stuff like this. I can't deal with stuff like this anymore.
And how did he react to that?
He just got more angry and confused.
Okay. And what kinds of things was he saying back to her?
He's saying, "I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what happened."
Okay. Did you ever hear any discussion about his cell phone?
Yes.
Tell the members of the jury about that.
Emma asked him if he had his phone or something like that, and he said, "No, I don't know where anything is." And I offered him my phone if he needed to call someone to pick him up or anything like that, and he refused because he didn't know anybody's phone numbers.
Okay. And he said that to you?
Yes, sir.
Did you, other than the issue about the phone, did you have any direct communication other than that, you offering up your phone because he didn't have his?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how did that encounter at the road end?
Emma started crying when she started walking back towards the house, and Riley turned to walk towards Gibbs direction of Tazewell Pike.
Okay. So Tazewell Pike goes out to Gibbs or down towards the city? And he walked away towards Gibbs?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, you said Emma had walked up to the house. Where did people go from there?
So we went back into the, I guess, rec room. It was the sitting area with a couch. There were 2 couches and a TV.
Okay, and what did you all do at that point?
She went with Haley to the bathroom because she was still crying for that. And we went and sat down.
Okay, and you all, did you discuss what had happened?
No, we tried to keep the topics away from it, to try and lighten the mood and try to cheer her up.
Okay. If you had to characterize how upset she was, how would you characterize that?
She was incredibly distraught. Violently sobbing.
How long did it take her to calm down?
20 or 30 minutes or so.
And who was comforting her?
Okay, let's break this down right now. Jonna, have you ever heard of a situation quite like this, almost an elaborate kidnapping that he's wanted to get the attention of his ex-girlfriend? I mean, he's sitting out on the driveway, but he's not really hurt.
Not exactly like that, but it is quite common for people, especially people who are uncomfortable being broken up or out of a relationship, to kind of do things that are not in their normal course of business, things that are very unusual in order to get the attention of their unrequited love.
Now, you said before evidence like this, of the text messages, the obsession, it would hurt his case, but couldn't you look at it as the other way and say he was obsessed with her, he loved her, he would never do anything, he just wanted her attention, he fired a gun into the house not knowing that he'd kill her just to get her attention, be her hero?
So I agree with you up to the point where he actually fires the gun, because think about it, there must be at least one parent on that jury, right? So of course, is it normal, let me put it in air quotes, for teenagers to incessantly text each other, whether they're mad, whether they're in love, out of love, whatever? Yes. But you see this escalation of the text, and then the weird kidnapping thing, and then ultimately shooting inside her bedroom in the middle of the night, Jesse. Her bedroom. It wasn't the living room. It wasn't the kitchen. It was her bedroom in the middle of the night where he was certain she was going to be asleep and defenseless.
You know, John, that's a great point, because if he wanted to get her attention, the argument is he could have fired in the air, could have fired in the ground. There was other areas. Why fire?
Knock on the door.
Right, knock on the door. Why fire right into the bedroom? Right. And one of the discussion we're going to have a little bit later is he knew about that bedroom, and it's likely he knew where she was sleeping and where her head would be on that bed. That becomes a big point for the prosecution. When we come back, though, we're going to move into testimony about who may have seen William Riley Gaul, or someone maybe that was not William Riley Gaul, in this area, this vicinity at the time of the shooting. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned here on Law and Crime.
My name is Sam White. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is legal news you can use. The internet can be a complicated place for many different reasons, but one of the questions that seems to always confuse people is, can I use a photo or image that I find online? Let's discuss. Okay, so first, copyrights. Copyrights are all the exclusive rights that someone has in an original work that he or she created, including images. How they're distributed, seen, copied, and otherwise used is up to the copyright owner. Generally, if you created the image, you automatically own the copyright in it. Pretty cool, right? What this means is that you usually need the permission of the copyright owner before using the image. However, ask yourself the following. Are you planning to use the image sparingly, or maybe only a portion of it? Are you not going to make money off of it? Are you using it in a news reporting, educational, or scholarly context that benefits the public? Are you completely changing the image so it's unrecognizable? Are you transforming the meaning of the image, like using it in a parody? Is it impossible to get the permission of the copyright owner? Well, if your answer is yes to some or all of these questions, then you may be able to use it without permission, but that's not always guaranteed. Also, sometimes images no longer are copyright protected, meaning they're in the public domain. Or the owner grants something called a Creative Commons license, allowing others to freely use the image in specific ways. There are websites that offer royalty-free stock images as well. You should look into all that too. Copyrights aside, if the image features a logo or slogan, or a person, particularly a celebrity, then other issues could come into play as well, including trademark, privacy, and right of publicity laws. I told you, complicated. So best practice is to get permission or give credit whenever you can before using an image, particularly on social media. For more legal news you can use, go to lawandcrime.com.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
Welcome back to Law and Crime, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber, and thanks for joining us here on a day where we're recapping some of the most memorable trials from 2018, and let's get started back with the trial we're covering right now. So we are focusing on the William Riley Gaul trial. This man was charged with the murder of Emma Jane Walker, his 16-year-old ex-girlfriend. It was alleged that he stole his grandfather's gun, went over to her house, and shot inside of her bedroom from outside the home, ultimately killing her. And that's where I want to move right now, into the testimony of James Walker. This is the defendant's grandfather, who will explain a little bit more about William Riley Gaul and what happened that night. Take a look.
But you, prior to him going to Markel College, you were aware, obviously, that Riley had a girlfriend, right?
Correct.
And what was her name?
Miss Emma.
Miss Emma, that's what you called her? Miss Emma? Okay. And her name is Walker, like yours? And you're no relation to Emma Walker, right? Or the Jill and Mark Walker, Evan was? Okay. And how many occasions would you say, as Riley dated Emma, would you have contact there with Emma?
That was in?
Yeah.
No, it was.
Okay. So you got to know her?
Absolutely.
How long would you say their relationship was before she died? How long had they been dating, in your judgment?
A couple of years.
Okay. And did you, were you made aware at some point after Riley went to Markel College that there were some difficulties that were happening in the relationship?
Yes.
Okay. How were you made aware of that? I mean, would you have communication with Riley directly, or was it just the family, or how? Okay. So discussion in the family. Did some things happen when he went to Markel College that caused you concern about his emotional well-being?
Yes.
What was that?
He had just a tremendous emotional crisis, what I would call an emotional crisis. I'm not a doctor, but just had something that was completely out of character.
Because it really hadn't happened before he went to Maryville? Something like this?
No.
Okay. What was this emotional crisis that he had?
He attempted to take his life.
And when did that occur?
I've kind of blocked that out of my head, to be honest with you, but it was in the obviously first year because that's the length of time that he was there.
Okay. And of course, you remember when Emma died, right?
Absolutely.
If you give the jury your estimate of what time frame before Emma died did he attempt to take his life? Was it a week, a month?
Weeks.
A few weeks? I didn't mean to put words here. You said weeks, plural?
Weeks, yes.
Okay. And how did you and your family react to that crisis?
Devastated.
Okay.
So,
what did you do?
he was taken to
That you do when you get in your car?
started, reached under the seat,
Why'd you reach under the seat?
habit,
And what did you feel?
holster.
There's a gun in the holster.
No, sir.
And what did you think?
Problem.
And you are a carry concealed permit holder, right? You said that? When you say it was a problem, how big of a problem was it?
There was no bigger problem.
Okay.
For me.
And so what was your concern? Where was your mind?
They did figure out what the gun was.
Okay, and what did you suspect?
Didn't suspect anything at that second. I immediately contacted Riley.
Okay, and what did you say to Riley?
You know anything about my weapon?
And how did he respond?
That he did not.
And what did you do from there?
I contacted his mother.
Did you have a discussion with his mother?
I did.
Did you believe him that he didn't have the gun?
Up until that point, sir, I never had any reason to not believe Riley.
Okay. You said you contacted his mother. What kind of plan did y'all come up with?
She was going to come out there immediately and investigate further.
All right, we're learning the details leading up to this shooting, and you just heard from the defendant's grandfather about his gun that went missing. Remember, it's believed by the state. The state says that Riley Gaul stole that gun and used that gun to kill Emma Walker. I want to move right now, though, into the defendant's best friend, Isaac Ewers, who will explain that he spoke with Riley Gaul after this bizarre kidnapping. And as you recall from our last segment, that basically William Riley Gaul staged a kidnapping to get the attention of his girlfriend, Emma Walker. That was the idea there. So let's listen to what his best friend had to say.
We weren't believing any of this. We knew that this was not really a kidnapping, but
you were going along with it?
No, sir. We told Riley that we were coming to drive up and down Pleasant Pike until we were in Miami because we knew it wasn't.
But he was insisting that it was true?
Up until the point we told him that we were coming to drive up and down Pleasant Pike, at which point he hung up the phone.
Okay. And so what did you do?
We put on our shoes, and within 10 minutes we were driving down the road, and that's when Riley pulled up in his car. Less than 10 minutes. I mean, we hung up the phone, put on shoes, walked downstairs, got in the car, and Riley pulled up.
Okay. So is he coming from the direction of Tazewell Pike?
No street is a dead end, so I can't say he was coming from.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So you're on your way to Tazewell Pike. He shows up there in his car.
In his car, yeah. We were not even 5 feet from Noah's driveway. We hadn't even made it fully out of the driveway. I'm sure the back of the car was still in the driveway as Riley pulled up.
Okay. And so who's in your car? In the car with you?
I was in the shotgun. Noah was driver, and Kendall was in the backseat.
All right. And so when Riley pulls up, do you guys abandon obviously your search for him, right?
Yeah. At first we were shocked because we just heard that he had been kidnapped less than 10 minutes ago, and he didn't know where he was at. And suddenly he pulls up in a car saying, "Oh, my head hurts. I'll explain everything when we get inside. Let's just go inside. Let's go inside." And we insist, "No, we can talk right here. If you're in danger, we need to go and get help, talk to the police, whoever we need to talk to make sure these people don't pursue you."
Okay. And what happens when you get inside?
Riley proceeds to tell us that he doesn't remember anything and that he was hit over the head, and he asked us to feel this knot on his head.
Okay. Does he tell you where he got kidnapped?
No, sir.
Does he tell you who he got kidnapped by?
No, sir.
Does he tell you any details of the kidnapping?
No.
Does he tell you that he'd been to see Emma?
No, sir.
Does he give you any information about this kidnapping?
No, sir.
Other than he was kidnapped?
No.
And whose phone was Riley using when he called you to tell you that he'd been kidnapped?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And so, how did you guys respond to that?
We had already known that this was a fib. We just kept pressing him. Who is it? What were they? What happened? Because obviously we're terrified for him. If this man's been kidnapped, that's my best friend. I don't want any harm to come to him. So we press him until he just sticks with, "I don't remember." And at that point it was, "I don't remember," over and over and over until we dropped the issue.
Okay. So eventually it just faded away that he'd been kidnapped?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you never called police or anything like that, right?
No, sir. We knew it wasn't a real thing.
Okay. Did you spend the night that night, Friday night?
I did not.
Did Riley spend the night, if you know?
I don't think so. I left before he did.
What time did you leave?
2:30, 3 a.m. That was pretty typical.
Okay.
3 a.m. was about wind down.
And when was the next time? Obviously, the next day would be the Saturday. When was the next time that you saw Noah or Riley?
I believe I got over to Noah's around 7:30, 7 o'clock.
Is this Saturday night?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Saturday night, who all convenes there at Noah's?
The same people. Me, Noah, Walton, Alex, Kendall, Riley.
Okay. And at some point, does Riley leave to go to a convenience store with anybody?
Yes, sir. I was not told that he was going to the convenience store. Instead, he asked me to step out and speak with him about something, and I declined. I was still upset with him for essentially telling us that he got kidnapped, so I didn't want any part of it. Alex was not there the night before, and Alex stepped out with him. He agreed to step out and talk with him. It was very commonplace.
Let's try to make sense of this right now with Law&Crime trial analyst Jonas Spilbor. Seems like a powder keg waiting to blow, and the signs are really bad. Now, we can't forget, though, that he's not just charged with murder, he's charged with aggravated stalking. Is this stalking?
Oh, I would say absolutely, because he's showing up wherever she is uninvited. Now, here's the thing, which could take it a little bit out of stalking. She has to be aware that he's present so that she is in some sort of fear for her physical safety. Typically, most stalking statutes require that. Now, it is apparent that she did know that he was texting her. Somebody answered the door when he sent himself disguised as somebody else to try to pretend that there was some nefarious thing going on. So most likely, stalking would be the least of his worries if that's all he's convicted of.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Is there a sense that if she at least gave into a little bit, communicating with him, speaking to him, is that hurt the stalking charge?
All right, so that's a very interesting question, because I'll tell you something that you don't know. when I had a stalker, and I did back in law school, the police told me not to respond to him because the theory is if somebody rings your doorbell 100 times and you answer it on the 101st time, then that person now knows that all they have to do is ring your doorbell 100 times and they're going to get your attention. So I don't think it would have helped her to respond.
I guess that's because, I mean, look, if you have two teenagers who were, dating, they break up, it gets messy, everything could enter into the realm of what's stalking and what's not. But here, I mean, this is a very different set of circumstances.
Yes, and for purposes of felony murder, which is another thing he's been charged with, the stalking will get him there. So will the fact that he's carrying a firearm that he's not authorized to carry on somebody else's private property, and he's been charged with a firearm charge too. So they get there one way or another.
What did you think of the grandfather's testimony about the gun?
All right, so my concern was I'm not quite clear whether he discovered the missing gun before or after the actual killing. It seems a shame if he had noticed it earlier and had questioned him earlier or had not believed him when he said Riley didn't have it. Was this another misstep and could have prevented this tragedy?
I'm sure there's a lot of people who were involved in both of their lives wondering if they could have done something to ultimately prevent this. But at the end of the day, William Riley Gaul was on trial, nobody else. That's the important thing to note. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to get a little bit more into the testimony and move on to another friend of the defendant. We'll be back.
I'm Dan Abrams, and this is the Law&Crime Network, the only 24/7 network with expert legal analysis and gavel-to-gavel live trial coverage.
He kissed me goodbye on the cheek. That was the last time we saw him.
From high-profile cases to the most compelling local trials.
You didn't expect. Let me finish.
We cover the most interesting and important legal news going on across the country.
The former officer took the stand.
And our multi-platform brand is resonating. From syndication.
With more, we're joined by Law&Crime Network host Jesse Weber.
To our expert analysis.
With me now is Rachel Stockman, editor-in-chief for Law&Crime Network.
This former head prosecutor, criminal defense attorney, and host of Law&Crime Network, Bob Bianchi.
On Monday, the Law&Crime Network covering the trial live.
Let's get to the top legal stories of the day with Jesse Weber, attorney and anchor for the Law&Crime Network. So good morning, Jesse.
With dozens of places to watch, we already have tens of millions of minutes viewed per month. And our viewers and readers are engaged, with more than 30,000 comments per month on the site, a bustling chat room, and an average watch time of 30 minutes.
Womanizer, that's fine. It doesn't make me guilty of solicitation of capital murder.
In the fastest growing genre in America, we are uniquely positioned to dominate. This is Law&Crime.
You talk to... In every family, small conversations can make a big impact. I grew up on tour with my parents. Kind of different, but we bonded over music just like other families do over sports, camping, or other interests. And we talked. Little everyday conversations from silly to serious that built a foundation over time. Honest conversations, like when my dad shared his experiences as an alcoholic.
Your honesty about that part of your life gave me a sense of integrity that I wanted to uphold in my own life. And I was so grateful that you and Mom had become these sober, stable people who were always there for me.
I wanted you to know, from someone who's been in recovery more than 30 years now, that hard work is what creates success, not alcohol or other drugs, whether it's music or anything else. I said it a lot, and I'm glad you took it to heart.
Talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Matthew.
I know that a lot of times, Mom, it might not seem like I'm listening to you, but I am. And what you say really does matter to me.
All the talks we've had over the years, including what you've told me about not using alcohol and other drugs, they stick with me, and they make a difference, especially at times that matter most.
Hey, want a drink?
No thanks, I'm good. So thank you, Dad, for preparing me for what's ahead.
Talk, they hear you.
Welcome back, everybody. We're recapping one of the most memorable trials of 2018, the William Riley Gaul trial, the man who was charged with the murder of his 16-year-old ex-girlfriend, Emma Walker. Where we last left off, we were listening to testimony about the bizarre behavior of the defendant leading up to the shooting, including that he tried to stage a kidnapping in order to lure the attention of Emma, to get out of her house that she was at, a friend's house, in order to get her out so she could talk to him. But as you know, one of the allegations was that he stole his grandfather's gun, and it was that gun that he allegedly used to kill Emma. I want to move right now into Alex McCarthy's testimony. This is a friend of the defendant who will explain that William Riley Gaul confessed to him to stealing the gun. Take a look at his reaction.
We moved this in as surveillance video pilot 9 minutes after midnight on November 20th. Alex McCarthy. And so in that trip to pilot is the conversation that we're talking about where he's telling you about the kidnapping and those types of things?
Yes, sir.
Okay. When you arrive back from the pilot, do you continue to talk with him?
In the driveway, yeah. A lot of that conversation kept going.
All right. Tell the members of the jury what he did during that conversation, what he
told me he was concerned so much about his safety that he had stolen his grandfather's gun, and he showed it to me, pulled it out from the driver's side area.
Okay. And, he had it concealed in the car somewhere?
Yes.
Okay, and he pulled it out from where?
His driver's side area. I don't remember specifically to the side, maybe in the seat. It was on his side for sure.
Okay, and he pulls it out, and what does he do with the gun?
Shows it to me. I guess just like kind of a story about how scared he was, whatever, about these people.
Okay. And do you recognize the gun? Do you know what kind of gun it is?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen guns very similar to it. Was a Glock 9mm.
Okay. And did he hand it to you?
No. Yes. Yeah, he did.
That night?
I did hold it, yeah, that night.
Okay.
Tim telling me that he didn't know if it was loaded or not to touch it or anything like that.
Okay. Are you familiar with firearms?
No, sir.
Okay, so do you know what a clip is in a gun?
Yes.
A magazine?
Yeah.
Could you tell whether the clip was in it?
No, specifically.
Saturday night, you're not sure?
No.
Okay. And so, as a result of that conversation, do you go back, or after that conversation, do you go back inside?
Yes.
And anything else that he told you out there in the car that concerned you?
No, I mean, honestly, it got to the point where I was just kind of rambling and just like trying to talk to him. So my first thought was that he was suicidal and would like hurt himself. And so I just kind of started talking to him, like pep talk almost, just telling him to come around and just using a brother.
But none of the words that he was telling you, these reasonings that he was giving you for having taken his grandfather's gun, none of those were in the nature of suicide. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. They were, or they?
No, it is fair to say that they weren't.
He was protecting himself.
Yeah.
That's interesting that this friend thought that he was suicidal, but clearly there were no signs that he was suicidal, but he was up to something.
No, but I guess it makes it even more scary when he steals his grandfather's gun, because now I suppose if somebody were aware of that, they wouldn't know if he's planning to use it on himself or somebody else.
Were you surprised that the defense didn't move into some sort of argument other than he was just a love-struck kid? I mean, it seems like there was some sort of psychological issue happening here.
You know, and I thought about that, Jesse. I'm like, why didn't the defense try to mount an official insanity defense? And I think when you look at the facts that we do know about this case, clearly the defendant knew the difference between right and wrong. I don't think he lost. Those synapses were firing, and perhaps that's why they chose, not to do that.
That's a great point. Seemed like he knew what he was doing. Let's move back to Alex McCarthy, who's going to describe a little bit more about how the defendant continued to try to cover up the crime. Take a look.
getting rid of the gun by yourself with him? Okay. And so what was his response when you told him that you wanted Noah to participate in getting rid of the gun?
He was immediately really hesitant, but he didn't try to break off from the plan or anything. I mean, he was going to Noah's house. But I remember whenever we got there, he asked me to come outside by myself and talk to him in the car for a minute before we went inside, and that's when he was asking me what the hell, what is he thinking? And I was like, no man, he thinks the same thing as me, we're just here to help.
Okay. And so where is it that you guys convene to start this plan?
Noah's house.
How does Riley get there?
He drives in his car.
And about what time does the plan to get rid of the gun start?
No, it was dark already. It was a little later. I'm sure at 9:10.
Okay. Had Alan Merritt, the Sheriff's Department, given you some recording devices at this point?
Yeah, we were prior to leaving for Noah's house, so yes.
Okay. And did you turn those recording devices on?
Yes, sir.
And so you and Noah are there at the house. You talk to Riley outside. Does Riley eventually make his way inside?
Yeah. Me and Riley went together after he told me to come outside, and then he got there, and I talked to him in his car for a minute, and then we went inside together.
Okay. And all of this is recorded?
Yes.
And when you have had an opportunity to review that recording?
Yes.
And review a transcript of the recording?
Yes, sir.
And you initialed it as accurate as to your memory?
Definitely.
Well, we won't talk about specifically what was talked about because we'll be hearing that. But tell us, where is it that you folks, you and Noah and the defendant Riley, head to?
After leaving Noah's house, we were heading to the Bluffs. We made 2 stops along the way. One at Cookout for food, and one at Pilot for gas.
Okay. And how is it that you're communicating with the police department or with the sheriff's department?
I knew that they were comfort and being able to hear everything that was going on, but I knew that I had no contact with him. I knew that Noah was in the back seat, so he was able to be on his phone a little bit more. I believe that he was texting you all kind of there.
Okay. Whose car did you drive in?
My car.
And what? Obviously, you were the driver. If it was your car, what seat did Riley Gaul occupy?
He was in the passenger seat.
Okay. And Noah was in, you said, the back seat. All right. You said you went to Cookout, right, first. And at this point, when you go to Cookout, had you seen any guns?
No.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I mean, you made 3 stops. Sorry about that. We had to go to his stepdad's house.
Okay.
Plumber.
Is that the first stop you make on Plumber?
The first stop we make.
All right. Go ahead and tell the members of the jury about that. On your way from Noah's house, you have to stop on Plumber?
To pick up what Riley said is the gun.
Okay, and describe that circumstance of how that happens. You pull up, you go into Seth's house? Or?
We did not park at a church across kind of the street. It's like across the street down a little bit. And we parked in the back, and Riley said that he would come back with the gun. Okay, and did he come back with more than the gun? Yes, he came back with a trash bag full.
Okay. And did he tell you what the trash bag was for?
He just said that he picked up a random trash bag and he just stuffed it out in it.
Okay. At some point, are you able to see the contents of that bag?
I could see when he was opening it when we had arrived finally at the Bluffs. It looked just like a lot of black clothes and he had a pair of white gloves.
Okay. And with regard to the trash bag, where did he place it during the travel?
Between his legs.
Okay. And so you said Noah was communicating with the police department or the sheriff's department on his phone in the back seat?
Yes.
Okay, Jonna, what you seem to be getting from this line of testimony and other friends that have testified, and again, they wore a recording device to capture what William Riley Gaul, they said, was not telling the truth. Mm-hmm. They might have said, I first had the gun because I wanted to protect myself. Then it seemed that he was asking for them to lie and to help ditch the weapon, and things took a different turn. Why did he ask one of his friends to see if he could get fingerprints removed? Why was he trying to get rid of the gun? Why did he say that I was going to be convicted of something I didn't do? So he buried himself throughout this whole case.
Yeah, he did. And again, it's another example of the escalation. And the fact, what we talked about before that clip was why wasn't there an insanity defense mounted, which was one of my questions. And that explains it, because clearly somebody who's asking friends to help him get rid of evidence knows that what he did was wrong. And then that just kind of takes the the wind out of your sails for an insanity.
And he
defense.
probably didn't imagine that he would be talking to his friends and they were secretly recording him.
No, nobody ever imagines that. But, you know, that's, again, the least of his worries, because there was so much other evidence of his guilt that this is just a little bit of the icing on the cake, so to speak.
And talking of that recording, we're going to take a break. We're going to play you some of the recording of the defendant talking about what happened. So stay tuned here on Law and Crime. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is more legal news you can use. Listen, I don't have to tell you that breakups can get complicated. Who gets the dog? What happens to the pictures? Do you delete the person off social media? But one of the most important issues, what happens if you share a bank account with your ex who just took out all the money? Let's discuss your options. By law, joint owners of a bank account each have a right to the funds. So technically, your ex could empty the whole account, even if you're the one who put the money there in the first place. Instead, think about requiring multiple signatures for withdrawals or having each person only own part of the account. But in the case of marriage, the law may help you. Yes, your ex, prior to divorce, may have the right to empty the whole joint account, but that doesn't mean he or she is off the hook. A court could order your ex to reimburse you a portion if it was taken out for improper purposes. This could be seen as dissipation or wasting of marital assets, and your ex may have to pay attorney's fees and costs associated with collecting. Also, his or her share of the marital property could be negatively adjusted. Oh, and shocker, courts aren't going to look too favorably on the person that spent that money on a mistress or paramour. Oh, and if your ex empties an account after divorce papers are filed, he or she may be in serious trouble because a court sometimes orders that no withdrawals can be made once the divorce process starts. Not all's fair in love, war, and money. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
My name is Sam White. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
Everybody, we're still talking about the William Riley Gaul trial, one of the most memorable trials we covered in 2018. And one of the reasons is because something happened to this defendant that he didn't expect. He was secretly recorded by his friends, And where do you hear what he said on that tape? It was played for the jury. Take a look.
And I'll try to do that. If the cops talk to you again for any reason, I talked to an attorney today, told him everything. I told him that you guys were high, drunk, and tripping. Because it's all disclosed. He's not allowed to tell anyone about that. He's not, he straight up told me, he said, they can't get in any legal trouble. You can't get arrested upon confession. And he said, if absolute worst came to worst, they would be put in handcuffs and put in a cell for one night and then let out the next day because they did nothing illegal. Like, they wouldn't find any else in your system or anything else. So, well, they can't, I don't think you can get arrested for having it in your system. Yeah, even if they drug tested you for pot, you have to have it on you to get arrested. What I'm saying is if I have to go to court in front of a grand jury or anything, and you have to testify, or if the cops are going to talk to you again, whenever you talk to them, just be like you were too afraid to tell them that you were on acid because you thought you were going to get in trouble. No, that's true. I've never been to that. Yeah, and if anything about that gun, just say, I must have misunderstood or something because I was tripping balls. I really don't know what was going on. He was just, Riley was just complaining to me about some stuff. I guess I thought I heard something about a gun. And his grandfather thinking he took it, knowing that I was scared as fuck when I used to take it to come and talk to him. Yeah. Just, as long as you tell them that if you tell them you're on LSD, you were drunk, and you're high, your mind was altered, whatever statement you give them wasn't a straightforward answer. Because your mind wasn't. Even if it was, they can't convict you based on that, right? No. If they could, they would have arrested them already. But they're saying that they found a round, a misfed round, which means you cock the gun back and it flies out. They had to explain it to guys. A little round? Yes. They said they found a single hollow tip round, which is the hollow point where it doesn't have the sound ball. You know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. Those are the same rounds my grandfather uses. Mm-hmm. They said if they find the gun and it matches it, which it wouldn't, because unless. So why do you issue the gun? It just needs to be gone. For whatever reason, it just needs to be gone. That sounds like you're ticket. That sounds like you're cold hard proof. Other than that, it's he said, she said. That sounds like you're but a bullet can fit into any normal law. That's true. That's true. I don't know anything about that. I didn't know that they tried lying. They tried lying about it specifically to the CRA of the gun. Any bullet you buy can be put in any kind of relationship law. Okay. And they tried lying to me last night when they interrogated me for 2.5 hours. I told them all the truth, where I was, stuff Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I was here until 11. I left. Told them where I went to go talk to them. Then I came back here and I called you, talked to you about my roommate. I already talked to my roommate. I said, if the cops ask you anything, tell them exactly what you asked me about the rifle. He said, okay, what's going on? I was like, just tell them the truth. And I told the cops the same thing, that my roommate asked you, and you were the first person I got on the phone with. So I was coming back to Knoxville, and I just asked you. So that's pretty much all of it. They lied to me in the interrogation room saying, because the attorney said that they'll do that. They'll lie to you trying to get you to confess something that that they were trying to get out of you. They straight up said, we found a misfed round in the back of her yard with 2 shots discharged in her house, through a wall. They said they found my grandfather's fingerprint on one of the bullets. But if they had actually found a fingerprint, he would be in custody. You don't just find a fingerprint in a murder scene and not take the person's fingerprint that you found. That's what the attorney said, just straight up. How do they know? Your grandpa would already have to be in the system. What doesn't make any sense? Your grandpa, they would have to have. They have to have his fingerprints. Because the gun he bought, he didn't get fingerprints. They swabbed them. But if they would have found a gun at a crime scene for murder, and they found any evidence with anybody's DNA to it, they would talk to them first. So they obviously lied to me trying to get something out of me because they think that I used my grandfather's gun to shoot up in his house. said, I'm not sure I was telling the truth. Like I said, I'm telling the truth. I mean, I was fucked up. That was the one thing that I didn't say last time I was fucked up. Yeah, I didn't say I was fucked up. If you just tell them that you were on acid, high, and drunk, and you didn't really understand what I was saying, you just kind of went along with it. I just thought I was the only sober person here. And I guess I'll talk to Isaac, because Isaac was going to be sketchy about that too, telling the cops that he's on drugs, but I'll talk to him another time. But if two of you say that you're doing it, and he says he doesn't, then obviously there's going to be altercation, and he's going to have to eventually admit to it. But yeah, just do that, because right now, I mean, they don't know anything, because if they did, I would be in jail right now. I mean, I know him and his parents are crazy too, like, so they're gonna come after you. Like, everybody that gets friends with her that doesn't like me because of like our past or whatever, they've said she killed herself, like she shot herself because of me, or that I shot her, or that. And then there's a whole other like category of blame where some people that understood the situation said she killed herself because of me and her parents, or she just killed herself because of her parents. But she didn't kill herself. She did. Nobody knows that but me and you two and my grandparents. They haven't released that to anybody. People just make up shit because they want me to be cool. How did they what? How did they tell you? Like the detectives you talked to? I asked them at the very beginning of the interrogation, I said, do you guys know anything about how she died? And they said no. But then later on, when all they called me in there to do, I went in there voluntarily. They said they wanted to get a timeline of the weekend, like where I was, what I was doing. Told them every single bit of the honest truth, where I was every moment of the weekend to my best knowledge. Who I was with. I said Saturday. I didn't remember how late you stayed. I said, I'm pretty sure Alex showed up for a little bit. Like he was there for a little bit. Not sure how long he stayed. And I know Isaac was there with the girl.
Wow. That was the defendant on a secret recording with whatever they were listening to just added even more dramatic music to that conversation. But John, all jokes aside, the audacity to say that Emma killed herself. That's what he's caught on camera saying. Well, she may have killed herself. It's something that me and her parents know.
You know, clearly he's having a little bit of a break with reality when he's trying to convince his friends of this. This is interesting to me, though, for another reason, and that is, A, it shows this is not a sophisticated criminal for what that's worth, but B, he had every right not to say a word, because we all have the Fifth Amendment right not to testify against ourselves at any criminal trial. And this information is how the jury gets to hear from his own words what happened after this crime. It's very chilling.
How many times do you see defendants trying to speak to family and friends about something that happened in an effort to protect themselves, and it backfires like this?
A lot. They try to concoct a story that people don't realize that anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Not just if you're talking to a police officer and you waive your Miranda rights. Anybody you talk to can then become a witness against you.
If you're sitting in the defense, how could you try and keep that tape out?
Oh, and I'm sure they did. I'm sure they filed a motion to suppress. But there really aren't grounds, because it wasn't conducted by police, and he's a defendant in this action. And there really are no legal grounds to not enter it into evidence.
So, in other words, if you commit a crime, be careful who you speak to.
Loose lips sink ships, Jesse.
And again, the question is whether or not this was an intentional killing. Why would he, if he really was obsessed with Emma Walker and loved her and wanted to be a part of her life and was upset that they broke up, why would he want to kill her?
So I suppose maybe that's what the defense sort of wants the jury to believe. But look, this was a kid who, technically a man, who went over there with a deadly weapon, fired it inside a bedroom, where a defenseless teenager slept. Obviously, he was upset about the breakup. He wanted to do something more than get her attention, because there are far easier ways to do that.
Yeah, because staging a kidnapping and trying to get her attention didn't quite work out. I'm curious, what avenue do the defense do they need to explore moving forward? Because we're going to still see what they intend to do.
You know, so the defense, I think, really wants the jury to take an X-Acto knife to what the jury instructions are going to be. They're going to try to claim that since he didn't intend to kill her, therefore you can't come back with a murder conviction, maybe something less than murder. And that takes a lot of technical acumen in order to convince a jury to do.
The love-struck kid defense, that this is just, love-struck kid, didn't know what he was doing, was acting like an idiot, that's going to work?
It doesn't fly when somebody's dead. It just, in my opinion, it's not going to fly.
What happens if they have a really persuasive closing argument?
Still not going to fly.
Well, let's see. When we come back, we're going to play you the closing arguments by both the prosecution and the defense, and we'll see what happened. We'll be right back. Hey everybody, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is Legal News You Can Use. Today's topic, you get injured on the job. Now what do you do? Number one, get first aid or medical treatment immediately. I want to make sure you're okay. Except in emergencies, you may have to go to a provider authorized by the Workers' Compensation Board or your employer. Second, notify your employer as soon as possible of all of your injuries, including any previous injuries you may have, no matter how small you may think they are. This is important because if you wait on this or are not transparent, you not only risk losing your right to receive workers' comp, but if this goes to court, your case could be thrown out for fraud. After notifying, then complete and file a workers' comp form and send to the Workers' Compensation Board. You need that money, my friends. Finally, when you're able, go back to work. Can't stress this enough because you place future compensation, benefits, and even your job in jeopardy. Claiming that you lost the ability to earn a living is not an easy thing to prove in court. Now you may be saying, Jesse, what about suing? I got injured, someone should pay. Well, before you go all off with their heads on me, determine if the injury was caused by any of the following: a defective product, a toxic substance, the intentional or negligent act of your employer or a third party, or if your employer doesn't carry workers' comp insurance. If any of the following are true, you may have a case. But as always, consult with an attorney first, and in some injury cases, you may need multiple attorneys. Go to Law&Crime.com for more legal news you can use. Hey everyone, this is Jesse Weber. Here at the Law&Crime Network, we are dedicated to bringing you the most interesting live trials and legal stories in the news today.
Goodbye, Larry. May God bless your dark, broken soul.
We've covered everything, from the Aaron Hernandez murder trial to the Harvey Weinstein sexual abuse scandal. Get ready, because we go live into the courtroom as the drama unfolds.
For the record, go to hell.
This is Law&Crime. Welcome back, everybody. So we're coming to the conclusion of the William Riley Gaul trial. Remember, he was on trial for the murder of Emma Jane Walker, his 16-year-old ex-girlfriend. And the question becomes, was this an intentional killing when he fired that weapon into her bedroom? Or was this merely just an attempt to get her attention and it backfired? Let's start right now with the prosecution's closing argument.
And it's obsessiveness of Emma Walker. Mark and Jill and Evan, well, they won't be the same. They are crushed. But you can right that by getting justice for Emma in this case. You also heard from John and Karen Warren and Jill Carney. They put time frames on things for you in this case. John and Karen Warren told you 3 o'clock in the morning. Luckily they were awake and they heard the gunshots. But if you got a sense of John Warren, you also got a sense of loss from him too. When you thought, when you saw the anguish that guy had, a neighbor, just a neighbor, and the guilt that he felt that this person creeped into the middle of his neighborhood at 3 o'clock in the morning wearing all black with a gun. You think John Warren, if he had caught him, that he'd have squeezed the life out of him? Creeping into a little girl's backyard. Imagine that. But the survivors killed a neighbor. Just imagine the anguish they feel when you saw that coming to a neighbor. You heard from Sarah Seaton's and all the people that attended Sarah Seaton's party, Keegan Lyle. You heard from Max Bacon, Zach Green, Haley McDonald. What they all tell you? Jim Walker, you could tell, was exasperated with his conduct. Ashley Donelon, his mother. Think about that jail call that you heard, and you think about the exasperation in a mother's voice when he tells her, I found Papa's gun. Riley, what? Riley, if you could, it was almost palpable. You could feel in her voice the anguish and the, I am so sick of this. I'm sick of the lies. But he turned that house upside down, Jim Walker did. He did everything he could. But he knew that gun didn't come out of the holster ever. And so he knew, I think probably in his heart you could tell that he hoped that some Maryville College kid had stolen it and was going to prank it or something. In his heart he hoped that Riley wasn't the thief, but he knew. And Seth Donelon, we talked about him. He had no idea that he's hiding the murder weapon in his basement. But Seth, too, was not going to come in here and lie for the defendant. And he told you he wasn't going to cover for him about the Saturday morning alibi. No, I wasn't there for breakfast with him. And then we got to Isaac, Noah, and Alex, his best friends, and think about what they told you in terms of the weekend and the bizarre nature of the things that were happening. And when you think about the nature of the bizarre actions that he engaged in, it all began when he stole that gun. Everything started to whirlwind as soon as he got that gun in his hands. Right? Friday afternoon, Jim Walker, gun is missing. Riley, where's the gun? I don't have it, Papa. Deny, deny, deny. And then comes the kidnapping story. Why is that? Because now he's armed with a weapon, and now if he can create this alternative group that's after Emma, and he actually does the attack, he can blame it on somebody else. That's what Friday night's about. You think about the text communication, come outside alone. Come outside.
Strong prosecution closing argument. You see William Riley Gaul with his head down listening to all of it. But let's see what his defense attorney had to say. This is the defense's closing argument.
And that is, said Riley appeared disconnected, blank expression, stoic, in shock, and crying. Believed Emma was still alive, around, and only hurt. David Weiss realizes that Riley doesn't know she's dead. And he doesn't say she's dead. That's not what he says. That's not the word he uses. He uses, she's gone. And you heard what he said, my client said. Where did she go? She's gone. It's at that point we submit to you that Riley realized that the stupidity and recklessness and bizarre nature of his conduct had resulted in Emma Walker's death. So what do? You got 120,000 reasons to try to distance yourself from this stupid mistake. And what I mean by 120,000 reasons, you heard Jim Walker testify. $40,000 a year scholarship to Maryville College. It's a freshman, so extend that out 3 years, $120,000. That's just the tip of the iceberg, and that's not the real thing that's going on here. But why would you distance yourself from that? Well, you don't want to disappoint your granddad. And you don't want to disappoint your mother. You don't want to disappoint your grandmother. "18 years old. That's the responsibility that you see." So what's
Okay, that's the defense's. John, before we reveal the verdict, what do you think?
I think it's a mistake to refer to this killing as a, quote, stupid mistake. I really don't think it's going to fly. The jury's not going to believe that an 18-year-old made a stupid mistake that resulted in a bullet going behind some sleeping girl's ear in the middle of the night. That's much more than a stupid mistake. They're not going to buy it.
Good prosecution closing argument right there. Okay, let's see if John was right. Here's the verdict in the William Riley Gaul case.
Mr. Gilder, has the jury reached the verdict?
Yes, sir, we have.
Will you please stand? Mr. Gaul, please stand. Mr. Gilder, in count one, the first defined offense charging the defendant with first-degree murder, did the jury reach a verdict?
Yes, we did.
What is your verdict?
Guilty.
Count two, charging the defendant. The charged offense is especially aggravated stalking. Did the jury reach a verdict?
Yes, we did.
What is your verdict?
Not guilty.
And for the lesser included offense of aggravated stalking, did the jury reach a verdict?
We did.
What is your verdict?
Not guilty.
And for the lesser included offense of stalking, did the jury reach a verdict?
We did.
What is your verdict?
Guilty.
In count three, charging the defendant with theft, did the jury reach a verdict?
We did.
What is your verdict?
Guilty.
And with respect to the value of the property, did the jury find the property to be worth more than $500 but less than $1,000?
We did.
Very well. And count four, charging the defendant with tampering with evidence, did the jury reach a verdict?
Okay, William Riley Gaul was found guilty of murder and other charges. He was sentenced to a mandatory life term, and he's going to be eligible for parole after serving 51 years in prison. Jana, during his sentencing phase, he said, I'm sorry I took Emma away from you. He was speaking to the family of Emma Walker. My intentions were not and never have been to cause physical harm. I wanted to scare her. I loved Emma. What do you make of that?
You know, I'm happy that he at least showed some remorse, but he's living in la la land if he's convinced himself that he didn't want to kill this teenager at the time, because he did. All of his actions speak otherwise. This, oh shucks, I didn't mean to kill her defense, didn't fly with the jury. It doesn't fly with me. There you have it.
And that's his fate, and what a fate that is, spending basically the rest of his life in prison. Jana, I know that we have to sign you off, so thanks so much for coming on.
Always a pleasure. I'll see you soon.
This is the start of 2019. You're going to come back on a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Here's what we're going to do. When we come back, we're going to continue our recap of some of the most memorable trials from 2018, and we know where we're going next. We're going into the George Burch trial out of Wisconsin. What a case that was. A murder case about who did it. Was it George Burch, or was it the victim's boyfriend? We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Memorial Day weekend is known for a time off work, cookouts, and pool parties. However, for 20-year-old Athena Curry, Memorial Day weekend 2011 would be the last time she was ever seen alive by her friends and family. The following Tuesday, Athena's live-in boyfriend and father of her child, Yusuf Majahid, would tell her family and police that Athena left the home around 3 a.m. Saturday morning after an argument regarding pictures Athena had found on his phone, leaving behind her then 16-month-old son, King. It's as if Athena Curry vanished without a trace. Joining me here on the Law&Crime Network is Aisha McGee, Athena Curry's older sister. At some point, she starts to date a guy named Yusuf. Do you know exactly when they started dating and what type of relationship the two had?
Yes, they started dating. She was a senior in high school.
I think there were some allegations of domestic violence, and especially, I believe, when Athena was in the hospital after giving birth to King. Can you talk to us about that?
Yes, sir, absolutely. The domestic violence started early on in the relationship, and I wasn't aware of all of it. As the investigation progressed, I found even journals and notebooks that she wrote about him beating her when she was pregnant. The day that she even was getting discharged from the hospital to bring King home, Yusuf was supposed to be at the hospital. I go to pick her up and the King up and Yusuf, and where's Yusuf? And she said, oh, we got into a fight, and he tasered her at the hospital with a taser gun.
Just so I'm clear, you're saying he actually used a taser that police use on the woman who had just given birth to his son at the hospital?
Yes, he did.
Wow.
Yes, he did.
So let's fast forward. This was the Friday before Memorial Day, 2011. So it's been 7 years. How and when did you actually find out your sister was missing?
It wasn't until that Tuesday after Memorial Day that I got a text message from Yusuf, and he says, hey, Aisha, this is Yusuf. Tell Athena to call me. And I'm like, what do you mean have her call you? She's supposed to be with you. And he said, no, she left Friday. And I'm thinking, Friday? I talked to her late Friday night. She was at your house. And he said, oh, we got into a fight Friday about 3 a.m. and she stormed out and left. And I was thinking, okay, and you didn't go after her? I said, she hasn't been home. She didn't come home. And then he said something that just made me just realize something was terribly wrong. He said she left King with him. And right there, I knew. My heart just sunk. And I said, I'm calling the police.
Do you believe that your sister Athena is alive and that you will hear from her?
No, it's almost impossible for me to believe that. She's 20 years old. Well, she would be 27. Where would she be for the past 7 years that she wouldn't contact her friends, her family, her son, anybody? And as soon as Yusuf had said that she left at 3 a.m. on a Friday and left King, my heart dropped then. In my mind, I said, oh my God, he actually did it. Like my worst fear came true then.
And if you have any information regarding the disappearance of Athena Curry, you're urged to call Atlanta Police Crime Stoppers at 404-577-8477. For the Law&Crime Network, I'm Vincent Hill.
And welcome back, everybody. So we are covering a very special set of trials here, memorable trials from 2018. And we just covered the William Riley Gaul trial, and now we're moving in to the George Burch trial out of Wisconsin. You might remember that he was on trial for the 2016 murder of Nicole Vanderheiden. This is the trial that we're about to cover. In the 12 p.m. hour, we're going to be covering the Tex MacGyver trial. He was accused of killing his wife, but was it an accident? In the 2 p.m. hour, we're going to be moving on to the Daniel Villegas case, a trial saga where this man was on trial 3 times. And in the trial that we covered, the one that you're going to see, it had one of the most dramatic conclusions we've ever seen in a courtroom. And in the 3 p.m. hour, we're going to move into the trial of Quentin Tellis, the murder mystery of Jessica Chambers. Who killed this young 19-year-old girl? That becomes the question. Was it Quentin Tellis or somebody else? Right now, though, we're going to focus on George Burch. As I said, he was on trial for the murder of Nicole Vanderheiden. It was claimed that he violently beat, sexually assaulted, and strangled her with a cord. He claimed, though, that he wasn't the killer, that it was really Douglas Dietrich, Nicole's boyfriend, her live-in boyfriend. And really, Nicole went out with her friends that night, and Douglas, and later on she was found dead. The question it becomes, who did this? And right now, a great place to start would be from the boyfriend himself, Douglas Dietrich, claiming that he had nothing to do with Nicole's murder. But let's see how he did on the stand.
The last area of questioning was that Nikki had left the watering hole with a group of your friends. And do you know about how long after Nikki left the watering hole, did you or Greg start to receive some information that you should come down to the sardine can?
I don't exactly recall if she had said something about the sardine can in the short phone conversation we had. But probably received some text from her, I don't know, I'm guessing 15, 20 minutes after that point.
In your short phone conversation that you had with Nikki while you were still at the watering hole, was she at the sardine can at that time?
No, I remember her saying, I think they were in the parking lot in the car about to leave.
Was Nikki upset with you at that point in time?
No, she didn't seem to be.
Shortly thereafter, you indicated that you received some text messages?
Yes.
At some point, did Nikki send you a series of angry text messages?
Yes, she did.
Do you recall the content of those angry text messages?
I don't specifically recall exactly what they were. I know that, or I don't know, I don't really want to guess, but they're like, what girl am I talking to, or something on the lines of that, and some other comments that I didn't know where they were coming from. And
is it fair to say that some of those text messages were really rather upset or derogatory?
Yes, they were.
This may not be pleasant, but if I read them to you, can you tell me whether or not that was a text message you believe she sent?
Yes.
Do you believe that at around 11:12 p.m. she sent you a text asking you, quote, "So what bitch you with"?
Yeah, that rings a bell, yes.
You recall her sending a text message that said, "Fuck you, abusive asshole"?
Yes.
Do you recall her sending a message that said, quote, "Wow, what slut are you with? Because none of your friends know"?
Yes, I do.
And another one that said, "I am not surprised. How many times have your dick been off for some whore"?
Yes, I do.
Do you recall responding to Nikki's text messages?
I believe I received those all like as a bunch grouped together that I had missed, that I had not looked at the phone in a few minutes or however long it was, and saw them all, and I responded back something kind of nicely, just trying to diffuse and maybe calm her down, because she seemed upset from the content of her text.
Was your response to her an angry response?
No, it wasn't. I wasn't upset.
How did it make you feel when you heard those text messages?
I was kind of puzzled. I didn't know what she was thinking, or I didn't know what was going on, you know.
Did Nikki continue to send derogatory text messages to you?
Yeah, I believe she sent some more after that.
Do you recall getting a text message that said, quote, "Sure, you still love whores"?
Yes, something like that, yep.
And do you recall what your response was to that?
I think I did like an LOL or something like that back to her, and like, are you joking? Are you kidding? What's going on here? I didn't get it.
Do you respond, and do you recall her sending you a text saying, quote, "Yup, I learn lots"?
Yep.
And quote, "Why else you so fucking retarded"?
Yeah.
Do you recall responding to that text message?
I don't know what text I specifically responded to it at what point, but I did respond back here and there, when I did look at my phone and noticed that she was still, texting me, and I don't know at what point I tried calling her too. And
do you recall if any of your responses to her text messages were angry responses?
No.
Do you recall using vulgar language with her in response?
No.
And why did you not respond in a vulgar or upset way?
Well, I wasn't upset, and I think I just kind of thought she was upset for an unknown reason, and that there wasn't really a reason for it.
And in fact, is it fair to say your responses were, you mentioned LOL or LOL, stop it, Nikki?
Yep.
And then just saying that you would be there soon or find her?
Yep, that I'd meet her at the sardine can or whatever. I'll be there soon.
Do you recall if the derogatory text messages then continued even after that?
I believe they did, yes.
And at any point in response to those messages, did you get upset with Nikki?
No, I didn't.
In fact, at one point she did send a text message that said, "You hurt me all the time."
Yes, she did.
Okay, let's break this down right now with law enforcement expert and fellow host here on the Law and Crime Network, Vincent Hill. Vincent, great to see you and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Jesse. Good morning.
Good morning. When we cover this case, I remember when we covered it, the idea is, doesn't the investigation always first center on the boyfriend? I mean, clearly this guy is an interesting character. I'm curious about the way he was investigated.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's be clear here, Jesse. About 95% of these types of murders, she was murdered in a very personal way, if you will. She was strangled. She was beaten. Ties to someone the victim usually knows. So, of course, investigators are going to look in the home first. And then you add these text messages the night of the murder. And investigators had what is a very dangerous thing in an investigation initially, and that's called tunnel vision, because they keyed in on the boyfriend and the father of her small child, and they really didn't look for any other evidence in this case, Justin.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that they might have had against them. Wasn't there evidence of an attack outside of their home?
Yeah, so there was definitely some blood-type evidence outside the home or near the home where Nicole was killed. So, of course, investigators looked at that. And, of course, when you're looking at blood evidence or anything like that and the fact that a homicide has occurred, then that's where investigators want to key that investigation in on. So, initially, yes, it did appear that the boyfriend, Douglas Dietrich, had everything to do with this homicide.
And, you know, in a little bit later, we're going to show more of his testimony where he doesn't seem to be that concerned, Vincent, about where she disappeared to.
Right. Yeah, and that was very troubling when I was watching the trial, Jesse. You know, here's, the mother of your small child, but you kind of appear like you don't care where she is or what's going on with her. So that definitely didn't play well to the jury. It definitely didn't make Douglas Dietrich look like the ideal boyfriend or ideal father.
Yeah, because there's a separation between, hey, I'm a bad boyfriend, I don't really concern, we got to fight, and I'm trying to cover something up. It's kind of suspicious. And that becomes this kind of dual situation in this case. But George Burch, despite overwhelming evidence pointing the finger at him, he claimed that Douglas Dietrich was the one who killed Nicole. We'll talk more about it on the upside of this break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned here on Law and Crime.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
Hey everyone, I'm Carissa Kranz, and this is legal news you can use. Have you ever been injured in a car accident? I'm a personal injury attorney, and I can help you out on this one. Here are 5 simple steps to follow if you're ever injured in an accident. Number 1, if your car is still working, pull over to a safe place. Number 2, call 911. A police report is proof that the accident actually happened, which helps in getting your car fixed and your medical bills paid. Now, typically an insurance company of the driver who is at fault is responsible for bills and damages. But if there is a dispute as to who is at fault for the crash, then the insurance companies may divide liability accordingly. and only cover a portion of the expenses and bills. Number 3, seek immediate medical attention. Your case is only as good as your medical bills and documented records. 4, preserve as much evidence as possible. Take pictures of the scene of the accident and any injuries. Pictures are the best evidence for a jury. Number 5, do not give a recorded statement to any insurance company without consulting a lawyer. Anything you say can and will be likely used against you. Just go to Law&Crime.com for more legal news you can use.
Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about some of the most memorable trials from this past year in 2018. And how could we not talk about George Burch? This trial out of Wisconsin, he was on trial for the brutal murder of Nicole Vanderheiden. But this case split people's opinions. Some people thought George Burch did this. Other people thought someone else did this, including Douglas Dietrich, Nicole's live-in boyfriend. And that became the question, who ultimately killed this young woman? Douglas Dietrich was called to the stand and denied having anything to do with Nicole's murder. I want to continue on with his testimony where he talks about what did he do when Nicole went missing. You might recall that she got into a fight with Douglas the night of her murder, that they were all out at a bar. She got angry, she left, they got into a bad fight. What was he doing during all this time? Let's see.
That kind of when you started to get going for your day at that point?
Yeah.
Pretty late to sleep in by normal standards, but
yeah.
How were you feeling that day?
Not good. I was pretty hungover, dehydrated, and...
Did you make any attempts to contact Nikki at that point?
No, I don't believe so at that point, because I woke up again. Dylan was, he woke me up again when he was laying in bed with me, and I got him seated in his high chair and warmed him up some baby food, and because this was right when he had just turned 6 months and he was transitioning from the breast milk to some of the baby foods, and actually I think he was on his second week of that, and trying some new things and mixing bananas and all that stuff up in it. And I remember making myself some mac and cheese and eating that and feeding Dylan.
And at that point, were you concerned about Nikki?
Yeah, I was wondering where she was kind of at that point. It's getting a little later in the morning. I figured she slept at a friend's house. She was, going to sleep in because she had been drinking a lot that night and probably felt the same as I did at that point, hungover and needed to sleep it off. And
did you start to make attempts to locate her then shortly thereafter?
Yes, I believe I sent some messages. I don't know if it was at that point or I know I had laid down with Dylan again because I still wasn't feeling that great at all. And I think I had sent some Facebook messages to Greg and Dallas and I believe her sister.
Why were you sending Facebook messages at that point?
Because I didn't have my phone with feeding the baby and everything, and I was right at the kitchen table. I remember going into my office, which is right off the kitchen and dinette, and would go send a quick message and then come back to Dylan in the high chair. And
do you recall who you were contacting on Facebook?
I think I contacted Dallas, Greg, and then Heather.
And who's Heather?
Nicole's sister.
So at that point, you're getting concerned to the point where you're alerting her family?
Yeah, I was, starting to contact people where, have you heard from Nikki? Where is she?
And what other things are you doing shortly thereafter to attempt to locate Nikki?
I know I was looking for my phone a little bit. I remember going upstairs and looking through, because I remember last time I was in the bed, and looked through it quickly. I didn't see it on the floor, and then went back downstairs quickly with Dylan, and I had a headache and was a little queasy. I don't know. I didn't feel that great and needed to kind of lay down again. And Dylan was, a little tired and cranky. And
at some point, did you find your phone?
Yes, I did.
When was that? Do you know?
We had taken a nap on the love seat. I remember laying there with Dylan on my shoulder, and I was watching the Brewer game and some other movie, and fell asleep there with Dylan on me, and then woke up after that point, and it was some point after 2 o'clock, I believe it was. I wasn't really looking at the time, but I think it was in the early afternoon. And I'm like, oh, here's my phone in my bed. I was just under the sheets.
By the time you then found your phone in your bed, you kind of up and about, getting going a little bit there?
Yep. And then I was really getting concerned at that point, and then I tried contacting Nikki and everybody that at that point, making calls and texts.
Again, who are you contacting then once you get your phone in order to try to get things rolling to find Nikki?
I contacted Greg, my parents, I contacted Dallas, and then we did, wondered if, I think Dallas had mentioned if she was in jail, checked the jail records, did an inmate search to see if she was possibly in jail, and then asked Heather to ask her mom if she could call the hospitals to see if she was at the hospital or anything like that. And I said something I wouldn't be able to call for HIPAA rights, and that her parents should. And called my parents and said, I don't have my car here, and I had told Greg to come over to give me a ride to my car, and said we gotta try and find Nikki here. And
did you make attempts to contact Nikki directly as well during that point in time?
Yeah, I believe I sent her a text, and I think tried calling her, and her phone was still off, and went directly to voicemail.
Okay, Vincent, let's see. What do you think about Douglas's steps to investigate what happened to Nicole Vanderheiden?
Well, Jesse, I guess on the surface it appears that he was genuinely concerned. He started sending Facebook messages. He says he couldn't find his phone. I don't know why, but he had been drinking the night before. So he was going through the motions of someone that was actually looking for Nicole that night. But the thing that struck me as odd is he said, well, I still didn't feel too good, so I took a nap. I napped for a little bit, then I got up, and then I finally found my phone. So if I'm a juror sitting in that jury box, I'm going to say, well, were you really concerned that your girlfriend, the mother of your child, was missing? If you had time to take a nap, whether you had been drinking the night before or not, you actually took a nap. You didn't go out. You didn't get in a car. Even though his car wasn't there, you didn't tell someone to come pick you up to go look for her. Those are the things I would ask as a juror, Jesse.
But isn't the flip side argument, everybody gets into fights with their loved ones, and maybe you just don't care where that person is the next day. You want a time to cool off. Isn't that another way of looking at it?
Yeah, that's definitely one way to look at it, but keep in mind they had a very small child together, that they were living together, raising that child together. So at some point, you would be concerned for that other parent to say, hey, where's this person at? Because you heard he was feeding the baby, he was doing this. He had been drinking that night. So at some point, you're going to say, where's the other parent at? So, yeah, you can look at it both ways, but it doesn't look good.
We're talking so much about Douglas Dietrich, we can't forget the fact that George Burch is the defendant. Now, he is claiming that he was framed, that he had sex with Nicole that night, met her at a bar, when he was knocked in the head by Douglas Dietrich. And when he woke up from being unconscious, Nicole was dead, and that he says Douglas is the murderer. I want to turn now to his testimony because, yes, we saw Douglas Dietrich take the stand. Let's move in to when the defendant himself took the stand and explained what he thinks really happened that night. Take a look.
And you said the bartender, I think you said her name was Brandy, had your drink ready when you got there?
Yes, sir.
And what did you say your drink was again?
Jack and Coke.
So you were drinking on this night?
Yes, sir.
Did you go alone to
Yes, sir.
At some point when you were there, did you end up meeting someone who you now know is Nicole Vanderheiden?
Yes, sir.
Tell us more about that.
I was in the bar area, went out before, had a cigarette, came back and standing there, and I don't know if I was watching TV or what it was, or talking amongst friends around me, but I noticed there was a fairly attractive blonde woman standing next to me.
What was she doing?
I believe she was getting a drink. I'm not sure. I just, there's a couple people over here, and she was over here, and I started talking to her, just making conversation.
Okay, so you noticed her and started talking to her?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember? Do you remember if you approached her, if she approached you? I guess kind of describe for us as best as you can.
I just leaned to the side and saw that she was standing, and she didn't seem to be with anybody. She was by herself, and I just kind of struck up a conversation. She was right in the vicinity, right next to me.
Did you see her walk in with anybody?
No.
Did you see her walk in?
I don't remember her walking, her coming in or where she came in, because she could come in through the front or the back, and I just remember looking over, and she was standing close to my area at the bar.
And you don't remember seeing her before that?
No, sir.
You struck up a conversation?
Yes, sir.
What kind of stuff were you guys talking about?
First started, she said that didn't sound like I was from here. I don't see myself as having an accent, but a lot of people do. And she just asked me where I was from, and started from there. Just talked about in general how I'd moved here and everything. Talked about my past, or just in general, tell her things about myself, trying to get to know each other.
At any point when you were talking with her, did anybody arrive that seemed to be with her?
No. We sat there and talked for a while.
Did you guys talk about relationships?
We both expressed that we had been through marriages. I told her I had kids. She told me she had kids from marriages. She was, I don't remember if she said separated or divorced. I told her that I was going through the current situation myself.
Does she stop, I guess, giving you directions?
She told me to pull over on the right.
And now that we've been here and you've seen maps and things of that nature, do you believe that was Berkeley Road?
Yes, sir.
So why did she have you pull over on the right? Do you know?
I don't know why she picked that exact spot to pull over. No, sir.
Did you have the impression you had arrived at her residence?
Yes, sir.
Did you go in her residence?
No, sir.
Why not?
She said there was a light on it. She thought the babysitter was still up.
So you never went inside the residence?
No, sir. I've never been in the residence.
She had you pull over on the side of the road?
The right side of the road, yes, sir.
Mr. Burch, just a reminder to speak nice and loud. Can the jury hear the witness all right? Okay. Go ahead, Attorney Stebbins.
You did pull over?
Yes, sir.
What happened after that?
We sat there and talked for a few minutes.
Okay. What happened after that?
Started fooling around, messing around a little bit. Started kissing.
And at this point, you were still in the driver's seat?
Yes, sir.
She was still in the front passenger seat?
Yes, sir.
And I don't want to get into too many details, but you said you were fooling around?
Yes, sir.
What does that mean to you?
Kissing. I was kissing her neck a little bit, touching each other.
Did you guys stay in the front seat?
No, sir.
Where'd you go?
The back seat of the Blazer.
How did you get into the back seat?
I got out of the driver's side and walked around to the back passenger.
Do you remember how she got in the back seat?
I don't remember if she got out, hopped in the back, or if she just climbed over.
Okay, that is the defendant. And remember, he was on trial for allegedly violently beating, sexually assaulting, and strangling Nicole Vanderheiden. Vincent, is his story consistent with the evidence that we've seen so far? I'm curious about your take on meeting this woman at the bar and then going back and fooling around with her when you're going to hear the next part of it later on about that he became the victim himself at the hands of Douglas Dietrich.
I mean, Jesse, so far you could argue that it is consistent. I mean, listen, we've probably at some point in our lives been to a bar where you strike up a conversation with someone. Not something I would do where I would take someone home from the bar, but we know people do that. So right now his story is actually pretty believable that, hey, I met this young lady at the bar. We were talking relationships. She said, hey, take me home. It has happened, Jesse. So and I think that's why George Burch came up with that defense.
I wonder if it's believable that she was in that bar by herself and she would just take this guy outside of her home where she knew Douglas Dietrich would be. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll cover some more of this testimony and recap a lot more of this trial. We'll be right back.
My name is Sam Leitch. About a year ago, I had a heart transplant. My life was saved on the last day that I was supposed to be on this planet. I don't know who my donor was, but that person saved my life. And now I know what a miracle feels like. It feels terrific. Having a new heart's given me time to spend more time with my loved ones, watching them grow up. That new heart gave me a new mission in life, and that is to get others to sign up to be organ and tissue donors. The most common thing I hear when I ask people why they haven't signed up is, I don't know, I just haven't thought about it. Well, why don't you think about it? Think about the life you might save or the life you might enhance. Over 130 million people have already signed up to be an organ, eye, or tissue donor. They're men and women, all ages, all races, and they have one thing in common. They want to save lives. Please sign up to be an organ, eye, and tissue donor. You don't want to miss your chance to save a life.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is Legal News You Can Use. The internet can be a complicated place for many different reasons, but one of the questions that seems to always confuse people is, can I use a photo or image that I find online? Let's discuss. Okay, so first, copyrights. Copyrights are all the exclusive rights that someone has in an original work that he or she created, including images. How they're distributed, seen, copied, and otherwise used is up to the copyright owner. Generally, if you created the image, you automatically own the copyright in it. Pretty cool, right? What this means is that you usually need the permission of the copyright owner before using the image. However, ask yourself the following. Are you planning to use the image sparingly, or maybe only a portion of it? Are you not going to make money off of it? Are you using it in a news reporting, educational, or scholarly context that benefits the public? Are you completely changing the image so it's unrecognizable? Are you transforming the meaning of the image, like using it in a parody? Is it impossible to get the permission of the copyright owner? Well, if your answer is yes to some or all of these questions, then you may be able to use it without permission, but that's not always guaranteed. Also, sometimes images no longer are copyright protected, meaning they're in the public domain, or the owner grants something called a Creative Commons license, allowing others to freely use the image in specific ways. There are websites that offer royalty-free stock images as well. You should look into all that too. Copyrights aside, if the image features a logo or slogan, or a person, particularly a celebrity, then other issues could come into play as well, including trademark, privacy, and right of publicity laws. I told you, complicated. So best practice is to get permission or give credit whenever you can before using an image, particularly on social media. For more legal news you can use, go to lawandcrime.com.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
Do you know the signs of a brain aneurysm? The worst headache of your life? Pain behind one eye? Dizziness or blurry vision? Don't ignore it. Seek immediate emergency care. The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation. Learn more at lisafoundation.org.
Welcome back to Law&Crime, everybody. We're recapping the George Burch trial, the murder of Nicole Vander Heiden back in 2016. Who did it? Was it George Burch, the defendant, or was it Douglas Dietrich, the victim's boyfriend? Now, according to George Burch, and we played you a little bit of his testimony when he took the stand, he had met Nicole out one night at a bar. They went back outside of her place, started fooling around, when bam, he gets hit in the head, gets knocked out, wakes up and sees Nicole's body. He claims that he was knocked out by Douglas Dietrich and that Douglas Dietrich killed Nicole and then forced George Burch to dispose of the body at gunpoint. We're going to see if the story makes sense, but let's play a little bit more of George Burch on the stand explaining the details of what happened. Take a look.
What do you mean?
I noticed someone or something laying in the back behind the truck or behind the blazer.
What did you see? I mean, exactly that you remember.
Once my attention got to that area, I looked closer and I realized that it was Nicole laying there.
Was that the first time, I guess, you had seen her since you were having intercourse?
Yes, sir.
Did you know if she was alive or dead at that point?
I didn't know if she was alive. There was a lot of blood on her face, come out of her mouth, on her back, but I couldn't. She wasn't physically moving.
So you first encountered her as you were I guess when you were walking towards the rear of the vehicle, and when you got to the rear of the vehicle, that's when you encountered her?
Right. She was laying on the actual street of asphalt behind the vehicle.
So she wasn't on the grass. At that point, did you know who that individual was?
Never seen him before in my life.
Do you know who that individual is now?
Now I do.
Who was it?
It was Doug Dietrich.
So let's keep moving. You both get in the vehicle, and what happens next?
I was told I was parked on the right side of the street, and I was told to turn the vehicle around. So I don't recall if it was a Y turn or a U turn, but I turned the vehicle around and went in the opposite direction of what the vehicle was facing.
Did you have your seatbelt on?
No, I actually tried to put it on, and you've seen it on movies before and things like that, and the only thing that come to my mind, the only option I had at that time was to wreck the car. And that's when I thought to reach for my seatbelt and put my seatbelt on, and then I was advised, don't even fucking think about it, don't touch it, when I reached up to grab it.
Were you in pain at this point?
I don't recall. It was more adrenaline pumping. I wouldn't say pain. I wasn't aware of it. I was more shaken and adrenaline just in the moment at the time.
Were you bleeding?
Not that I'm aware of, sir. I had blood on me, but I don't think it was mine.
So you turned the vehicle around?
Yes, sir.
So you were heading back towards the way you originally came from?
Yes, sir.
Keep walking us through that, George. What happened next?
I was driving, and while I was driving, I was told where to turn and which ways to go. I remember turning, I don't remember which direction we turned, but I remember, I want to say it was like a four-way, maybe a stop sign or something, and then I was told to turn it, I want to say it was left. Like, I don't remember, to be completely honest. I just remember I was told directions on which way to go and where to turn.
What was this other, well, what was Dietrich's demeanor like at this point?
Still behind me, still being forceful, telling me what to do. As far as I could tell, from what I could see from the glancing in the rearview mirror, he still had the firearm on me and was still sitting in that same direction behind me.
While you were driving, did he ever touch you with the firearm?
He nudged me. I can't say what it was that hit me. From what I've seen in his hands, I believe that's what it was, right behind me on this side. But for certain, I can't say.
So he's telling you to turn, whatever he's telling you, go straight, go left, go right.
Yes, sir.
For the most part, were you on a paved street?
Yes, sir. Lined road, paved road.
All right, folks, what you're seeing is one of the reasons why this became one of the most memorable trials of 2018. You have the defendant who's claiming another person committed this crime, the boyfriend of the victim. Let's continue on with his testimony.
Position in your arms eventually change?
Eventually, I had to, when I had turned around, and I was looking at his direction, I couldn't hold her legs at the same time, so I ended up dropping her legs, but still holding I had my arms underneath her arms, or armpit area.
So at some point, I think what you're saying is her feet are on the ground, but you're still holding her by her armpit?
Right, I'm holding her up, and her feet are more, if I'm standing this way, I dropped her feet, and she was kind of like we were at a little bit of an angle at I'd say the beginning, of where it starts to go down, where the ground descends down.
You said at some point you're facing Dietrich?
Yes, sir.
What's going on at that point?
He was basically telling me to put her down and put her in that area, or place her in the area where I was, and he was instructing me on what to do.
So if her feet are on the ground as you described, and yet you still have to move her body, are you essentially dragging her?
When I had let her go, he had pretty much stopped, and I was at the area pretty much where I had been instructed to let her go at.
Okay, I'm back here with Vincent Hill. Vincent, we can't have two versions of these stories be together and make sense. Either Douglas Dietrich is lying or George Burch is lying. We've heard the testimony from both of them. What do you think?
Right. Well, Jesse, I got to tell you, I did not believe George Burch there on the stand for several reasons. I've been married twice. Listen, if I came home and my wife was having sex with another man in my driveway, do you think I'm going to kill my wife and then let a witness to that murder leave unscathed, i.e. not be killed himself? Not likely. And George testified to some of the things that I found strange. Oh, I wanted to put my seatbelt on. Who thinks about putting a seatbelt on when they have a gun to the back of their head, Jesse? I mean, his story, the bar part, you could say, yeah, that's believable. They met at a bar. But this whole thing, oh, I got knocked out. I came to. She was behind the truck. He put her in the truck. He told me to drive around. I couldn't put my seatbelt on. To me, Jesse, is just not believable.
It seems, like you said, everything could be credible until when he's knocked out. Because maybe that's, again, if you believe that George Burch did this, took her back to the car, sexually assaulted her, killed her, things took a bad turn. But right when he gets knocked out, wasn't there no evidence of any injury to his head? And if he's getting hit on the head where he's unconscious and he's asleep the entire time this murder happens, something doesn't add up.
Yeah, something doesn't add up. There was no evidence whatsoever that he had taken a blow to the head. And not only that, I don't believe there was any evidence that Doug Dietrich was actually in that truck. I mean, there's touch DNA, there's fibers, all of these things that could have been found inside that truck. Why would Doug Dietrich get inside that truck knowing that he's going to leave his fingerprint, if you will, inside that vehicle? Because this wouldn't have been a planned homicide. He wouldn't have had on latex gloves or anything like that. This would have been a crime of passion. So he wouldn't have been thinking about hiding evidence or hiding the fact that he was in that truck, Jesse.
Then you got to explain it to me. If none of this is true, if this is all a lie, how could his defense team mount this defense? How could they put him on the stand and have him tell this story?
Yeah, I think they thought maybe the jury would buy this. You know, they knew they had these text messages between Nicole and Douglas that didn't seem to fare too well for him. It painted him as this lying, this cheating guy who didn't really care about Nicole. So I think they really thought the jury would buy this, Jesse, that, again, she was in the bar, she was intoxicated, she met this guy who seemed to be a nice guy, and that was it.
Yeah, and it's not like he's coming forward and saying, hey, I woke up, you know, she was dead, I don't know who did this. He is directly pointing the finger at Douglas Dietrich. Is that, from your sense, too convenient? It's not like it's a third party. Oh, I'm going to point right at the boyfriend.
Yeah, it's very convenient. I mean, who else would society and a jury and maybe even investigators, as we know, believe did this but the boyfriend? So I think the defense in itself, as outlandish as it is, was a very smart defense.
Well, I'll tell you what, we kind of did our own little cross-examination of George Burch, but when we come back, we're going to play the actual cross-examination of this witness, and we'll also reveal to you the verdict. We'll be right back.
I'm Amy Dash, anchor at the Law&Crime Network. People are always asking me, why did you leave your law job to be a legal reporter? And I say, stop, let's rewind and flip that script, because I went to law school to be a legal correspondent so that I could explain the law in a way that anyone can understand it. Can the imminent threat be something that has built over time, or does it have to be an imminent threat that exists at that very moment that he goes out and shoots to kill?
It's got to be imminent.
What I love about the Law&Crime Network is we're not just covering trials, we're examining justice so that the public can question it and help shape it. And through that coverage, I get to take the law and bring it down to earth for you. And that is truly an honor.
Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is more legal news you can use. Today's topic centers around an all too familiar one: drunk driving.
You're out, have a few drinks, get behind the wheel of your car, and then are pulled over by the police. So the question is, are you required to perform field sobriety tests? Let's break it down. There are a number of tests an officer can ask you to perform to determine how drunk you are, but the three big ones are the following. The HGN test. Officer observes how your eyes move as they follow a pen or flashlight. Walk and turn test. You would walk in a straight line, touching heel to toe, then turn around on one foot and walk back the same way. One leg stand test. You stand on one foot and count aloud. Now, by law, you don't actually have to perform field sobriety tests. That's right, you can refuse to take them. The same is true for a breathalyzer test, which measures blood alcohol concentration. However, even if you don't take the tests, officers can still arrest you if they have enough probable cause to believe your driving is impaired. Also, in many states, simply refusing to a breathalyzer test can result in a 6 to 12 month automatic suspension of your license, fines, and maybe even jail time if you have past DUI convictions. Bet many of you didn't know that. One more quick thing: blood tests. Unless police have a warrant, you cannot be punished for refusing a blood test during a DUI arrest.
But the most important thing, ladies and gentlemen, to avoid all of this, do not get behind the wheel of the car if you have been drinking. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
I'm Rachel Stockman for Law&Crime, and here in Law&Crime, we love bringing you inside the courtroom action because it's so important for the public to see how our justice system works. Plus, you never know what's going to happen when the cameras are rolling.
Welcome back, everybody. We're coming to the conclusion of the George Burch trial. Where we last left off, he had taken the stand in his own defense and said that he wasn't the one who killed Nicole Vanderheiden, that it was really Douglas Dietrich, Nicole's boyfriend, who did this, that he was merely having sex with her in a car outside of her house when, bam, he gets hit in the head, he's knocked unconscious, and he sees Nicole's lifeless body, and Douglas is the one who did this. Now, you can imagine that when George Burch was cross-examined by the state, things got pretty interesting. Take a look.
Part of your not gentle sexual activity that you had with her, right?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
That was all a result of your not gentle sexual activity that you had with her?
If that's the way you would put it, yes, sir.
I think that's the way you put it.
It wasn't gentle, no.
It was painful.
That I don't know.
Painful because it wasn't consensual, right?
No, sir, that's not true.
What really happened was you drove Nicole home 20 miles away from where you lived, fully expecting that you were going to have sex, right? That was your expectation. You were going to have sex. That's why you're driving her home, right?
I was hoping that we would. It was leading from what had happened before and where we had spoken. It seemed like that's what was going to happen.
And when you get there and it becomes clear that Nikki isn't going to have sex with you, when she attempts to go into her house and leave your vehicle, that's when your mood changes, right?
No, sir.
That's when things get aggressive, don't they?
Not at all.
That's when you grab that cord and strangle her, don't you?
No, sir, not at all.
That's when Nikki gets slammed on the ground repeatedly when she's trying to run toward her house, when those bloodstains lead in a direction back to her home.
None of that is true.
Well, how do you know? You were out cold when Nikki was assaulted.
Because you said I did it.
Nikki was strangled. She had a fractured jaw, correct?
I don't know, sir. That's what the medical examiner said. But I can't speak for sir. I'm not a doctor.
You heard all of that, right?
Yes, sir.
You saw her injuries. You sat through court to see the defensive injuries to her hands, to her feet, to her palms, to her fingernails, that she fought for her life, right?
According to what the doctor said, yes.
Oh, a good cross-examination is pretty amazing to watch. Now, Vincent, you just saw this. That was pretty interesting to see, that back and forth, because clearly the state is not having any of his story.
Yeah, absolutely. They weren't having any of his story, and they kept pressing him. And you can see George Burch get agitated there. And one of the things that the state put on was her defensive wounds. And keep in mind, when Douglas was arrested, he didn't have these defensive wounds. So it goes back to who really did this. Was it Douglas? Was it George? You know, if she put on a fight the way that the medical examiner said, then I believe Douglas Dietrich would have had some type of injuries to his person and say he did.
You know, Vincent, one of the reasons this is such a memorable trial is there was a lot of evidence put in, including Fitbit data. The prosecution put in Fitbit data to show that Douglas Dietrich was sleeping at the time of the murder. I'm curious, what were your thoughts on that evidence coming in?
Well, you know, Jesse, that evidence is still fairly new in trials, but I think it helped to his defense, Douglas Dietrich's defense. Not only was there no real physical evidence tying him to it, like, again, no defensive wounds or anything like, or should I say offensive wounds to his body, but the Fitbit data actually showed that he was indeed upstairs in his house asleep, like he said, like he testified to. So I think that actually helped, and I think as technology evolves, we're going to see more of this, not just relying on DNA evidence, but electronic evidence as well, Jesse.
Yep, you're definitely right about that. Let's see how it happened. Let's see what happened in this case, though. You heard the testimony from George Burch and Douglas Dietrich, two completely different narratives. What did the jury ultimately come back with? Well, we're going to have to show you the verdict in a second, but as Vincent said, technology became a big issue. Did they buy into that Fitbit data? Let's see.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we've been advised that you've reached a verdict. Is that correct? Then if you would pass the verdict forms over to the bailiff. State of Wisconsin versus George Stephen Burch, Brown County case 16 CF 1309. The verdict reads as follows. We, the jury, find the defendant, George Stephen Burch, guilty of first-degree intentional homicide, is charged in the information. It is signed by our foreperson and dated this first day of March 2018. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is this your verdict? They are saying yes and shaking their heads. Does either party wish to have the jury polled?
Yes, Judge.
All right. There's a right to have the jury polled at this time, and this is how it will work. The juror right to the left of the bailiff. If that is your verdict, just you may say, yes, this is my verdict. If not, you can answer, no, this is not my verdict, and we'll just go down the row and around. So, is this your verdict?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I have one last instruction to read to you. Your service in this case is completed. And on behalf of the court, our court staff, and the citizens of Brown County, we greatly appreciate your service and the personal sacrifice that you've made in fulfilling your duties as responsible citizens. You have been a very attentive and patient jury. We thank you for your service. We hope that you will look back on this experience as a very positive one. You do not have to answer any questions about this case now from anyone other than the court.
Okay, that guilty verdict, and you see the reaction from the family of Nicole Vanderheiden, and you saw the reaction of Douglas Dietrich there as well. Vincent, you know, this was a very interesting case to follow, and clearly the jury didn't believe George Burch's side of it. But this is just chapter one. I know that he is going to appeal this ruling, and some of the things that they may be looking at to appeal, one of them is the evidence that was collected, including his cell phone. I'm not sure if you had a chance to see the question there, but the idea was that his cell phone data was captured during a hit-and-run incident that happened prior to this whole situation, and they kept on to that data and looked into it in relation to this murder. And the defense lawyers were saying that was an illegal search of his phone. He only handed over that phone for the hit and run. It had nothing to do with this case. I'm curious your thoughts about that.
Well, yeah, Jesse, if they didn't get a warrant, per se, to search his cell phone data for this particular crime, then it could be very well argued that that was an illegal search of his data there. But keep in mind, Jesse, there's a small part of this that actually tied back to George Burch, and that was DNA later found on part of Nicole's clothing. So they can argue that it was an illegal search, which may lead to a different trial, a new trial, if you will. But you cannot escape the DNA evidence in this case, Jesse.
You know, you're 100% right, Vincent, and that's a big point. It was the cell phone evidence, it was the testimony, it was the blood evidence. This is all becomes a big issue, and clearly the jury decided that one way or another. Vincent, I appreciate you coming on with me. I want to let all of our viewers know that I will be signing off, but Bob Bianchi is coming on next, and he's going to guide you through the next trial in our memorable trial day, and that, of course, is the Claude Tex MacGyver trial, one of the most infamous trials from last year. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. Stay tuned here on Law and Crime. Hey everyone, I'm Jesse Weber, and this is Legal News You Can Use. Today's topic, what happens if you don't pay your credit card bill? Let me just say, don't put yourself in this position, all right? It's not one you want to be in. First, the credit card company will start to contact you after your first missed payment, usually when you're 30 days late. Now you may think, oh, I'll just ignore them. Well, after 60 days without paying, your interest rate could skyrocket. I'm talking doubling or even almost tripling. You also probably have to pay a late fee and your credit score could go down. So are we having fun now? Well, it gets worse. After 90 days of non-payment, the credit card company could terminate your account and then sell your debt to a collection agency. In some states, you could then be sued, which could result in a garnishing of your wages and or a lien placed on your bank accounts or property. I told you, not good. Here's a tip. If you're going to have trouble paying, get in front of this. Don't ignore the credit card company or debt collection agency. Communicate with them and be honest. You may be able to work out alternative payment plans, and in some cases, it may be wise to retain an attorney. Go to lawandcrime.com for more legal news you can use.
If you're talking, they will hear you.
We all want our kids to grow up safe and healthy, so we show them how. And we tell them with honest conversations that let them know what we expect. Not just one time, but every chance we get. That's especially important when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. Kids not only need to know the dangers and how to avoid them, they need to hear it often from you. And when it comes to pain medications, opioids, they need to know that they should never be taken without a prescription and never shared with friends or family. It's dangerous and illegal. So talk with your kids and guide them through the challenges of growing up safe and healthy. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
So talk, they hear you. You can do it if you try.
Can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me something. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, no thanks, not my thing.
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
A brain aneurysm can strike you when you least expect it, plunging your entire world into darkness. But if you know the warning signs, you're much more likely to survive. If you suddenly experience the worst headache of your life or sharp sudden pain behind your eyes, do not ignore it. Please seek immediate emergency attention. It's time to shed some light on brain aneurysms. You gotta know the information.
The Lisa Calagrassi Foundation, lisafoundation.org.
Well, welcome back to the Law and Crime Network. My name is Bob Bianchi, and I'll be taking you from 12 to 3. We've got a lot of activity going on here today. We're going to be recapping some of the additional, most memorable trials, doing a Law and Crime rewind, if you will, with regard to a number of cases that I have two great guests that are going to be able to help us out here today with regard to that. Some of the upcoming trials, the memorable trials that we have, as you see on our screen right there, at 12 is going to be Tex MacGyver. At 2 p.m. will be Daniel Villegas. Then 3 o'clock, we're going to have Quentin Tellis. So that's what we got coming. And I've got Linda Kenny Bodden and my hashtag 4041. Gene Rossi, you're going to work us through with that. But we also have some really great upcoming trials here at the Law and Crime Network. And I'm going to just talk to you about some of them right now. Just real quick to give you an idea, we got the Florida versus Melanie Eam case. You may remember that case because it had been a mistrial before in 2018, where we had basically 4 people that were for conviction. You see her there on your screen right now for second-degree murder, and 2 of the jurors that were for a lesser manslaughter. That's not going to bode well for the defense because essentially all of those defendants are indicating that they believe she was guilty of something. That's going to be a great, fascinating case on retrial. The other case we're going to be handling is Jason Dalton. Man, this case is one of the most bizarre cases that I've seen come around the block in a long time. He was driving for Uber. He's got all sorts of mental health issues, although the court has deemed that he is competent to go forward at his trial. And ultimately, he winds up, you see a picture of him right there, giving a passenger a crazy ride, and that guy gets out, and then he believes he's looking for somebody named McKinney, drives past a girl, Tiana Crothers, and says to her, "Are you McKinney?" She says no. He drives away, comes back, he shoots her. Then he winds up later on at a Cracker Barrel where he winds up shooting a number of people there, including Mary Lou Nye and Mary Jo Nye, 62, 60 years of age respectively, Dorothy Brown, who's 74 years old, Barbara Hawthorne, who's 68 years old, a little young 14-year-old girl, Abigail Koff, who actually survived. You see the individuals up on the screen right there. And in addition to that, he actually went to a car dealership, believing that there were BMWs or black cars circling him, went to the dealership and shot a father and a son while in the dealership. That case is really something else, a terrible tragedy, and you can be assured it is an odd, strange case, the kind of case that we love covering here at the Law and Crime Network. The other case that we're doing is the McStay family murder case in California. You may remember this case. It got a lot of publicity years and years ago, but 5 in a family went missing, and 3 years later were found in a desert. It had been believed that they had actually gone to Mexico, but that turned out not to be accurate. And Charles Merritt is the defendant in that case. He was the business partner of the father of that family, and they charged him, there's a picture of him there, they charged him with the murder of this family. Obviously a horrible and horrific case where they were found in the desert in a shallow grave, and some items that connect him to that crime led to the ultimate charging. And then lastly, if that's not enough on our plate for 2019, we have New Jersey versus Monell, our home state, Linda Kenny Bodden, and my good friend, the Cumberland County Prosecutor Jennifer Webb McCrae's office is handling that case. And they are he is accused of stabbing his estranged wife, witnessed by a child, at least during part of it. And you're going to be watching that case because that's going to have a lot of interesting twists and turns. Again, another domestic violence related murder. So guys, that's where we're at right now here at the Law and Crime Network, and we are going to next move into 2019 trials, and so let's just take a look at the 2018 block with MacGyver that we were talking about, because the 2019 trials we just went over. So I'm not certain whether or not we want to go with the 2019 trials or we want to go with this case. Let's go to the 2019 trials.
I'm Anthony Velez, and here are the top upcoming trials of 2019. The quadruple homicide trial of Charles Chase Merritt, the man accused of fatally beating a business associate, his wife, and their 2 preschool children, is set to begin on January 7th, 2019. The 61-year-old suspect is facing charges in connection to the disappearance of business associate Joseph McStay, his wife, Summer, and their young sons, 4-year-old Gianni and 3-year-old Joey Jr., from their home in Fallbrook in 2010. The family's remains were discovered in the Mojave Desert in 2013, and Merritt was arrested in 2014. Merritt represented himself for a short period, but later sought legal assistance. Merritt now faces the death penalty if convicted. The trial of the retired Tampa police captain who claims he fatally shot another man in self-defense during a dispute at a movie theater is scheduled to begin on February 25, 2019. 75-year-old Curtis Reeves reportedly fatally shot Chad Olson inside the Cobb Grove 16 after the 2 men argued over Olson's use of a cell phone during previews. Olson allegedly approached Reeves and threw a bag of popcorn at him before Reeves drew his gun and fatally shot Olson. Reeves tried to claim a stand your ground defense, but a judge rejected the defense argument, and that decision was upheld on appeal. His defense team will reportedly argue self-defense at trial. Reeves is now facing a second-degree murder charge. The trial of the Georgia man accused of killing an 11th grade history teacher in Ocilla is set to begin in April 2019. The defendant, Ryan Duke, was arrested in 2017 in connection with Tara Grinstead's 2005 disappearance and death. Duke and another man, Bo Dukes, reportedly told friends at a party a month after Grinstead's disappearance that they killed Grinstead and burned her body. Duke now faces multiple charges, including felony murder. Bo Dukes faces charges of concealing a death, tampering with evidence, and hindering the apprehension or punishment of a criminal. A man accused of killing his pregnant ex-girlfriend and a police officer who tried to arrest him in Florida will stand trial in May. Marky Floyd is accused of fatally shooting his ex-girlfriend, Sade Dixon, on December 10, 2016, before shooting Orlando Police Lieutenant Deborah Clayton when she tried to arrest him in January 2017. Lloyd reportedly lost the use of one of his eyes while being apprehended by authorities,